Hi, you're watching Twit. I'm Devindra Hardwar. This week I'm joined by Anthony Ha and Padre. We'll be talking about Apple's iPhone 16 event, everything tech-related from the presidential debate, and also the crazy high price of the PlayStation 5 Pro. Tune in.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
You're watching Twit, episode 997, recorded on September 15th, 2024. Put an OLED on it. It's time for Twit, This Week in Tech. I'm Devindra Hardwar. I'm a senior editor in Engadget, filling in for Leo Laporte. Got a great crew this week, including Anthony Ha from my sister site, I guess, TechCrunch. Hey, Anthony.
Hey, great to see you, Devindra.
Happy to have you here. Love to chat with you, Anthony, because it's like I deeply miss New York. So whenever we talk, I could just envision getting back there somehow. That's the goal, at least. And also joining us is Father Robert Ballister. Hey, Padre, how's it going?
Very well, thank you very much, although I am extremely jet-lagged at the moment. And I'm a little concerned because it seems to have cooled off here way earlier than it should have. So,
no, really?
I don't know, yeah. Normally it's still, 90 degrees over here, 100 degrees. Now it's like 70.
We're seeing things are weird because I feel like right after the heat of summer, we got spring. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and I got spring rains in early August. It's very confusing. And even though we had like 90-degree heat in May or something, so things are pretty wild. I don't know. How is it over in New York, Anthony?
It's we're kind of getting a last gasp of summer. It's like I think I went out for a walk. It was low 80s.
Love it.
And hopefully it'll cool down a little bit, but it's nice for now.
That's my happy spot, like low 80s, because everybody low 70s, but I'm like, I know the winter's coming. I know fall's coming once we dip below 80s, and it just feels sad to me. We may also have Denise Howell on this episode. We're trying to get her on right now. Looking forward to that. But I specifically chose this week because I just had a feeling that Apple's iPhone event was going to be happening this week, and it all kind of like lined up. So I'm the gadget guy, everybody expects me to talk about all the gadget stuff. I contain multitudes. We'll have a lot of other topics, but I do want to ask you guys, we're, almost a week away from the Apple event and everything. I don't think it was a super interesting event on the iPhone side, but are you at all sold or intrigued by the iPhone 16 models or the idea of Apple intelligence in general?
I think if I had lower than an Apple iPhone 10, I'd be intrigued by the 16, but otherwise not so much. I did like what they did with their watches. I thought it was incremental with the earbuds. It's a good event as far as Apple's concerned, but yeah, I don't see a rush to upgrade except for the super Apple fans. Yeah.
Or if you have like a 12, I guess, or 13, I could certainly see reasons. I upgraded last year, and I think part of the reason that got me was like titanium in the Pro cases, and I didn't think that would be a big difference. But I had put in an order for a 16 Pro, and I went to the Apple Store. I was like, I should probably feel the 16 Pro Max or the 15 Pro Max and see what it feels like. It's like a dramatic, night and day difference because I've always hated the Max phones before. They always seem too big. So that was a big lift last year for me. This one, if you have a iPhone 15 Pro, you don't even need to upgrade if you want Apple Intelligence. So that's the whole thing. Anthony, where are you sitting these days?
Well, I was going to say I do have an iPhone 12, so I've kind of held on to it and held out. But I mean, to be honest, nothing about the announcement made me feel like, yes, I need to upgrade. It's more the only reason, to be honest, is that the battery is kind of on its last leg. So I'm like, well, if I'm going to get a new iPhone, might as well just get the 16. The camera button sounds cool, but everything else, it's sure. I'm going to get that one because that's the new iPhone and I need a new iPhone, but I'm not excited, I would say. And in terms of Apple Intelligence, I feel like it is the AI product that I find the least alienating. So I'm like, maybe some of this stuff I could imagine using.
Some of it's good, yeah.
But I again, it's not like a big selling point. I'm like, I'm. This is one where I'm open to being convinced. Whereas I feel like a lot of other stuff, I'm just like, get that away from me.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way about Apple Intelligence. I've been covering a lot of the AI stuff, so Microsoft Copilot stuff. Not as much Google Gemini, but Engadget, like we're all talking about it and looking at all the features and everything. I was at WWDC when they talked more about Apple Intelligence and gave the full reveal of it and everything. I've been testing it for the past few months. And a lot of those little features, like the notification summaries, good stuff. Email summaries, really dig it. There's some enhanced Siri stuff we can test right now. I just like the new look of Siri and the ability to send like natural language commands and stuff like that. But I don't know how much of a phone seller it's going to be for anybody, especially since these features are coming down the line. Like the full new Siri, all those capabilities aren't coming until early next year too. So that seems like a weird spot for Apple, right, to announce this thing. But hey, we're still doing the homework. We still got to like ship all these products, even though we're going to be shipping these devices, right?
I mean, the 16 does have that new CPU, which I do kind of like. I'd love to play with it and to see exactly how well it's optimized for generative AI. So that's, I mean, if I was going to play with it, that's probably what I'd use it for. There doesn't seem to be anything that a normal user would really die for on the 16. But if you wanted to play around with Apple's version of AI, I want to run that hardware. I really do.
Kind of makes sense. Also, Anthony, like just saying, Apple called out like iPhone 12 users in particular. Like there are probably some good upgrade deals going on. So I feel like if you're in the cusp of that, if you have a 12 or 13, this is probably a good time to just look at what your carrier will offer you for an upgrade, because if you're upgrading from an existing iPhone, there's little chance you'll be paying full price. You know, there's a lot of discounts to look into here. So I just want people to do that research and check out what's going on there. I remember when I upgraded last year, like they gave Verizon gave a lot for my phone, so I did not expect that stuff. Potter, you mentioned that the Apple Watch seemed like a good upgrade this year, and I agree. To me, I feel like that's the device that kind of stole the show, even though they didn't devote as much time to it. But yeah, Apple Watch Series 10, it is bigger screens, thinner design. It seems like the idea of the Apple Watch is just fully formed, complete right now. That's probably when I'll look to get at some point, right?
I would really like for them to improve their battery life. That's been a stick, because my entire family, except for myself, they're all Apple people, and they all have Apple Watches. My father uses it specifically for fall detection, but it dies so quickly. I would actually update if they could give me a dedicated all-day battery.
Yeah. I feel like that's probably they're working towards it. Do you know which one your dad has now, Padre?
Oh, not a clue. Honestly, we have such a hodgepodge of Apple devices around the family. It's just sort of like, oh, you need something? Well, here, I got this in my drawer. That's
That's you get the hand downs. I have an Apple Watch Series 4, which still works pretty well, but I'm tempted for that upgrade. Have you gone Apple Watch at all, Anthony?
I have not. My wife and my in-laws have it, and I think I think basically like at the point where somebody can convincingly say that I'm like old enough that probably I need some of the health monitoring stuff,
we're all getting there. We're all getting there.
You know, people watching the video can see the gray in Devendra in my hair. But I'm holding out for another few years. Partly related to what Padre was saying, like that. I just feel like I don't necessarily need another device to charge right now. And I'm like, there hasn't been anything that's like totally pushed me over the edge. Like in general, the Apple Watch, I look at it and I'm like, this seems cool. If I was going to get a smartwatch, this is the one I was going to get, but I'm not convinced that I need it yet.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like when they started adding the features like the crash detection stuff a couple of years ago, me as sort of like paranoid dad was like, oh, that would be really great, actually. If something were to happen and we could get help immediately, like stuff like that is starting to get in my brain. And then Apple is clearly like all their early ads are also really selling that. The whole opening video was like, look at how great these devices make our lives, but also it saved my life. My Apple devices are also so important.
On that, 7 years ago, I got a device from CES, and I was playing it off as a gag. It's an ultrasound monitor for your bladder for incontinence monitoring. And it's like, okay, maybe use it in a nursing home, but I don't see this ever taking root. I'd actually like that now. There's several family members that I would love to give that to them. So, Anthony, to your point, it's okay to say we're getting old. We're getting to be old hippie techies. That's just normal. That's how it works.
We're expecting our devices to do a lot of cleanup for us. I keep reminded, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but there's an anime film called Rojin Z, which I think about quite often. It's an 80s movie. It's about basically elderly people who are in these giant robots that are doing all the assisted facility care, and the old people rebel, and they take those robots that they're sitting in and basically like wreak havoc around the world. But I've thought about that a lot. Just like, is that us? Is that us eventually? Is that all?
I probably wasn't the demographic for that film at the time, but I might be now. You said 80s? This was 80s?
It's like an 80s anime movie.
I love that period of anime, though. Okay, I love it. Rogen Z.
Rogen Z. I honestly, I reference this a lot, and I think somebody uploaded it to YouTube at some point. So just search it out, people. Okay. Classic film. But I do think the Apple Watch serves as sort of like, there's an ideal for what you want for it, right? Like my daughter is in kindergarten now. I'm imagining in a couple of years, I'm like, I would like her to have some sort of way. I would honestly like some sort of location tracking or something. Yep. I don't want to do one of the tag things. I do think an Apple Watch GPS that is tied to our family accounts, and then she could call us if anything happens, like in 3rd or 4th grade, before she would need a phone. Like I could see the value in that. So I guess as life gets more complicated, I'm like, oh, this would make life a lot easier, or at least alleviate some of that anxiety that I have. Anthony, for you, I'm just thinking like, if you're on a run in New York, and you don't want to bring your phone along, like there's a chance like you could still be in communication with your wife. And I think that could be useful. Yeah.
Yeah, I think definitely actually probably the use case that's most appealing to me right now is like leaving my phone behind when I go like hiking or running. I suspect that will push me over the edge at some point. But right now I'm still doing the awkward armband, stuffing the phone into it, which is not ideal.
You're doing the armband. I used to do the running belt. You can stuff it in there, and now like I'm running in the suburbs. So I'm honestly just holding my phone in my hand when I do it. But
that is absolute psycho behavior. I do not understand that at all.
It's great.
I'm sorry. The two of you keep saying this running thing. What is that?
Physical movement outside. Almost touching grass, but not quite.
Oh, so like a Peloton, but like in the real world type thing?
It's a thing that's good for some parts of your body and then destroys your knees, is bad for your feet. It's a weird like trick we played on ourselves that it's like good for us.
You also have to watch out for the giant machines that take over all the roads. Like those are all dangerous. Like running is a bad idea, actually. We should just all be inside all the time. But no, yes, Anthony, I am now holding my phone because I feel like the balance of my body is actually works a little better when I do that. But I'm not a serious runner. I think you run more than I do. But yeah, when I used to wear that belt, just did not like the way it like leaned my body in one way, but that's a whole thing. Are you guys excited at all about the AirPods stuff? There's a new AirPods 4. There's AirPods 4 with ANC, which I'm unconvinced without sealing your ears that it would actually work really well. But according to Billy Steele at Engadget, who's our audio guy who did the hands-on for us, like he says it does something. It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing, I guess.
I had a set of AirPods one generation ago, and I actually liked them. They were decent. And then Poly sent me their free 60 plus UC earbuds, and I haven't turned back. They're more comfortable. They last longer. The case is better. There's more functionality, and it's actually cheaper. So yeah. I mean, I'm not an earbud hater. I found something that I think for me works a lot better.
Yeah, and that's Poly used to be Plantronics, right?
Correct. Yeah, and then they were bought by HP.
Yeah, that's a better name.
Poly's a much better name.
Plantronics was always so confusing to me.
Their whole pitch was like, our headsets go to the moon, or our headsets go to space, because they used to produce the stuff that was the astronauts used.
Oh, that's cool.
That was the whole thing. That's a cool company. I hope HP is doing good stuff with that. But yeah, you can get all sorts of good earbuds these days. Anker, the cheaper brand that sells stuff on Amazon, like is fantastic.
They make
all their headphones are great.
Yeah, at a great price point.
I guess I'm not an audiophile, so I feel like for me, earbuds are. I mean, like Bluetooth, like earbuds are like pretty much a commodity product, and I do the AirPods because they're easy to use with my Apple devices, but. They're not something I upgrade a lot. It's much more like, okay, when it breaks, I'll get a new one, but I don't really care that much about new features. Maybe there's a common theme in me talking about a lot of different gadgets. I will say, I mean, the cool thing about the cool announcement that was AirPod related, that was, I guess, I'm going to wait for this. I don't know what's happening. Like, I started recording, and maybe there's like crimes happening. Who knows?
You're also right in front of a window. I know. Like your setup. You're basically you're just getting full pipe of street noise.
But this is unusual. Like, there's sometimes regular car noise. Like, getting buzzed by a helicopter has never happened before. Because the other announcement about the AirPods, which wasn't like a new device, but was this hearing aid capability, which they announced at the event, and then a couple days later, I think. FDA announced that they had approved them for that usage, which I thought was like, pretty cool.
The pros, and that's interesting.
For the pros.
So for the AirPod Pros Gen 2, yeah, some actual medical stuff, like Apple said several times, clinical grade hearing testing, clinical grade, basically allowing to be used as a hearing aid too. And yeah, that approval came. What do you guys think of that? Because that is an existing device that's been around for, I guess, a couple of years at this point, but it's continually getting upgraded. And to me, that is the sort of rare thing that I would love to see more. They're not like just throwing new features there and selling it again at a high price. I'm looking at you, AirPods Pro Max. But yeah, the AirPods Pro, I don't know, all these upgrades just seem good to me. Seems like a net good for everybody.
I mean, I like it. I like more features. More features are always better, especially since those are actually decent features. It's not just some glossy extras. However, they run the risk of kind of losing sight of who their audience is. Most of their audience are not looking for hearing aids. Most of their audience don't really care about a hearing test aside from showing it off to show, hey, look, I can do a hearing test on my iPhone here. But I mean, I'm not gonna knock them for that, because it was a natural iteration of the product, and they are including some additional features, and the price point is still pretty stable. So yeah, I mean, I've got no problem with it. I don't think that's gonna be used at all, but it's interesting.
I think there's an awareness too from Apple. Like a lot of their core audience, the people who follow them for the past 20 years, are getting older, and a lot of people have deteriorated hearing and are not aware of it too. So it's a whole thing. It kind of fits into the whole, like, oh, if you buy an Apple Watch, it could save your life. You should probably get an Apple Watch, because it will literally save your life. And I feel like the hearing aid stuff, I could see people buying AirPod Pros for their older, family members, because maybe they refuse to wear a hearing aid because they hate how clunky they are. I've had family like that. But if you give them, here's some cool earbuds, but also could do the hearing aid stuff, that could be useful.
As someone who is taking care of elderly family right now, I would never buy them these, because they would be lost in about 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's an interesting point. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
Well, then you can buy, I've seen these accessories. They're sort of like rope that you tie the earbuds to, and you just like put them in, and then people can keep them on their necks. It's amazing innovation.
Oh, no. Well, because I guess you can put the AirTags on the, what do you call it, the capsule, or I forget the package, but I think it's hard to attach them to the actual AirPods if those get dropped somewhere.
They do. There is location stuff. So if you lose one earbud in your home, I've used the Find My app.
Oh, that's right.
Go around. So you get some of that. You do get some of that, but honestly, we make fun, but I miss the old the Beats Fit Pro that had the necklace. It was sort of like a necklace, and then the buds were wireless and doesn't connect to your phone with a cable. But I love just wearing that thing around my neck, because when I was on the subway and stuff, I didn't have to worry about, it popped out of my ear, and now it's on the subway floor somewhere. I think that whole, as great as wireless audio buds are, it's a disaster the minute it falls out of your ear, because you don't know what the hell is happening. Most recently, I was on a flight. My AirPods case fell. I picked it up while I was going down the runway. And then there was an alert. Hey, we found one AirPod on the on the entry gate or something. So turns out it was mine, and I had to wait for them to go get it. So that wouldn't happen if I was wearing a necklace. Damn it.
Last winter, so at the Korea here at the Jesuit Korea, we actually have access to the sub floors and the underground space under our streets. There's one area that has a big grate just outside of St. Peter's, and we haven't cleaned that area for years. So we did last winter, and I collected probably 30 or 40 earbuds that had fallen down through grates.
What?
They had just collected there. And not just Apple products, like every kind of earbud and little techie, kitschy thing that would fall down through a gate. And so I'm wondering, those people knew where it was. They had location on, but they just couldn't reach it. So if I powered them up now, would they show up on people's devices?
I think so.
Let's do it now. Let's do it live. This will make the show exciting.
That could be a whole series, yeah.
Once AirPods are coming out, we would often see people just leaning over a grate being like, oh, yeah. It was a very common New York site. I'm like, is this really progress? Are we really, is this actually a good thing for us, losing headphone cables? So I was unconvinced about AirPods for so long. and it took like other stuff from like other companies like Jabra to make buds that sounded better too than the original AirPods. So I don't know.
I'm not normally an earbud guy. I don't like earbuds. I like over the ear cans. But it's sort of become the de facto for me when I'm traveling. I can't travel with the big ones anymore because I don't have the space. So I see their use, and I guess I've just gotten used to it. But I used to hate putting anything in my ear.
I hear
with
you.
a passion.
I hear
And
you.
I think if I'm being honest, like, I mean, I think there's a lot of pluses and minuses for my AirPods. I mean, generally they work very seamlessly and they're great and lovely, not to worry about the wires. It's a little bit of a pain, you know, when you're using multiple devices and then like Apple is trying to figure out which device to play the audio from.
Right.
But like, I wonder if I would have made the switch if all of my Apple devices still had a headphone jack. If I didn't need an adapter for my like wired headphones, I might still have those, I think.
Same for me. When I switched to the Pixel Pro 8, I had to go for earbuds. I had to go for something Bluetooth. But before that, I was always using wired audio products. Now, I will say this. Apple did change the way that I look at audio products, specifically with earbuds, because the Poly series, the 360, the 20, the whole setup that they sent me, those are the first earbuds I've ever used, Bluetooth earbuds, that I didn't have to constantly repair, because Windows and Android have been notorious for just freaking out on the pairing process. And I know that the rest of my family, which has been using Apple products, they never had problems with that, at least not that they told me about. So to have that seamless experience, that kind of gave me a glimpse into, okay, you know what? That's actually something I would have switched to the Apple ecosystem, just to keep from having to repair every 2 days.
And they basically fix Bluetooth with a lot of their audio chips, and I feel like that is the thing. I want to talk more about this actually, but let's head to Leo for a word from our sponsor.
Hey, Dravindra, it's me, Leo. I came back from vacation. Yes, I'm in Canada. Can't you tell? This episode of This Week in Tech, I wanted to come back to tell you about Fundrise. Venture capital, pretty much everybody agrees, is one of the most lucrative asset classes in the world. I mean, if you get in at the beginning, before exit, before IPO, on one of the biggies, you're set. Go look at the S&P 500. Nearly every major tech company on that list once funded by venture capital firms and producing billions of dollars in profit in the process. But the bad news is that the biggest venture funds you don't have access to. They're most entirely funded by institutional investors like endowments, sovereign wealth funds. So unless you know a guy who knows a guy, you and me and 99.9% of individual investors just don't get to participate in the pre-IPO growth of any of those blue chip. They're blue chip companies. It's happening again. Look at the biggest names in AI, for instance. Almost all of them still private, which means still just out of reach of your portfolio. Well, that's why I want to tell you about the Fundrise Innovation Fund. It's finally changing that. It's a big fund, more than $125 million. It holds some of the most exciting pre-IPO tech companies in the world, and you can get in on it. It's designed specifically for individual investors. This time, you can get in early. Fundrise, Fundrise, fundrise.com/twit. Of course, carefully consider the investment material before investing, including objectives, risks, charges, and expenses. This and other information can be found in the Innovations Fund prospectus at fundrise.com/innovation. And this is a paid advertisement. That means we're ready for more Devindra. Take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Leo. Padre, you were saying like you don't think younger folks would use like a lot of these hearing features. And I do think the one thing is the sort of like automatic noise protection, like the loudness protection. That can at least help save people's, hearing when they're going to concerts and stuff, right?
I mean, yes, but that technology has been around for a long, long time, and they tend to turn it off. Which I needed it for the longest time. I've had hearing loss. I know that. My thing was more or less, it's like when there was a trend a few years back. There was an audio file that people would play to test their hearing, and it turned out that it was all bunk. It wasn't a real thing. Of course, it wasn't a real thing. You can't account for non-medical grade devices being used for a medical test. So that's interesting. And I would do it once, but how many times are you going to test your hearing? I mean, are you going to really? How many times?
Well, not just the testing, but the automatic, like you're at a concert, it's like you have your AirPods in and it lowers levels. Like when loud and outside noises get, that could be useful, I think.
I mean, if they're using it, I would not go to a concert and put earbuds in. That would be extremely counterintuitive. Yeah.
I probably should have done that a couple of times. Like I saw Sleigh Bells at South by once, and they have like a 10 stack of speakers. I was right up front for an hour. Probably lost a little bit there.
Loss. That's permanent hearing loss. Yeah, definitely.
Did you guys see that Jack Antonoff, I forget where this was, maybe at the VMAs, people saw in the footage that he was wearing earplugs, and people were making fun of him, and he was just like, yeah, I mean, why not? Like, what are you objecting to?
It's like the way things have gone, like anti-mask too. It's like, how dare you protect yourself? I take personal offense to that. I don't know.
Oh, I have a set of concert earplugs, but I mean, they're specifically designed to drop the level that comes into your ear without changing the frequencies that come through. So, I mean, that's what I use, but those are completely unpowered. Those are all passive, which means that they're also less expensive, and I'm not too concerned about losing them. They tend to be more comfortable because they don't weigh that much. So again, cool feature, and I'm sure at some point I would find a way to use it, but I don't see it as like the killer app.
I think they mentioned it would be on by default too. So it's one of those things where people didn't even have to be aware. It's like your earpods is doing that.
Actually, it would be useful in New York where it's so loud normally.
Right. Well, I think also the other thing that's interesting is that, my colleague Brian Heater, he pointed out that I guess there have been other cases where there maybe has been functionality that start out as accessibility functionality in the Apple Watch that eventually became a broader feature. And, you could imagine these kind of ideas of like noise profiles and custom noise profiles as being something that could be for anyone using, AirPods, and like you're walking down the street and say you're listening to a podcast, and, you don't want like total noise cancellation. You want certain things eliminated, but you want to be able to hear people talking, or maybe you don't actually, but I don't know, maybe there's some things you do want to be able to hear, the honking of a car that's about to hit you or something.
Actually, if they had a fast enough response time to be able to be used as ear protection while I'm shooting, that I actually would like. But they don't claim
shooting guns or shooting
firearms. So shooting firearms, you need ear protection. 100% need ear protection.
But you need those like big boy cans when you're.
You need the big boy cans. But if this is ANC, and if it is actually occluding your canal, I don't know. Maybe this could be a test.
That's one thing I almost wonder, like, Apple probably has never thought about. They're like, oh, people go to concerts. People go to stuff. Shooting ranges. These users.
I bet there are Apple executives who go to shooting ranges. I don't know.
That I don't know about. Who would it be?
There is a shooting range right next to the campus in Cupertino. So, I mean, they should.
They should. I'm in outside of Atlanta, Georgia right now. And literally, I looked on my map. There's 10 shooting ranges around my city. That's fun.
I think they're required by law in Georgia.
Yeah, in Georgia. That's just how it goes. Okay, I hear you. I hear you guys. I feel like my thing in New York was like as soon as honestly, like I was chaining like wired earbuds around me forever, but it was always like one earbud in. Like that was my thing. So at least like I could hear everything else outside of it. It's cool to see the tech like just progressing, and accessibility tech becoming regular tech. That's also really, really interesting to see. And also, cool that Apple has done a lot of this accessibility work as well. Anything else you guys want to mention from the iPhone event, or just anything else? Because there's a lot of other news. It feels like every week is a month's worth of news these days, because also the presidential debate happened last week, like within the last week. And we have some news around that too. But anything else from Apple you guys want to hit?
I mean, I'm curious what you guys just think of it seemed like maybe this happens at any event where Apple isn't making a big announcement, is there's sometimes this backlash is too strong, but like sort of like a little bit of discontent, just this sense of like, none of this is that exciting. Like,
why didn't you change my life?
Yeah. And is it like, to what extent should we just be like, well, this is what smartphone launches are now? Like, there's not, it's kind of an established technology, and it's unlikely there's going to be any radical change anytime soon, and that's fine. That's what we should expect from the event versus is that disappointing? Is Apple in trouble? Is Apple out of ideas?
Yeah.
Which, because I think I'm more in the camp of it's fine. That's a smartphone launch.
Smartphones have gotten boring. Like we're almost 20 years from the arrival of the very first iPhone, so we have seen the stuff plateau to the point where they're all kind of boring slabs. And then, foldables happened, and there is still some innovation there, but Apple's not doing that yet. I feel like the Vision Pro last year was the rare thing where Apple could be like, here's a whole new thing. Look at what we're doing. And also people didn't really care because it was too expensive. Personally, I think the Vision Pro is a very forward-looking thing and something meant for developers and professionals. I would not judge that whole category dead yet. But yeah, Apple didn't have the exciting new devices here, right?
I mean, they kind of painted themselves into a corner a little bit because their releases have been so refined, and their strategy has been so good over the last, I'd say, 20 years. That if they don't release something that wows people and radically redefines the market, there's automatically the sense of, they failed. And they haven't. I mean, the last radical thing they released was the Vision Pro. They swung for the fences. They were trying to make a new market, and it failed spectacularly. Well, they can't do that every single year. They can't take that kind of hit every single year. Give them time to try to figure out, regroup, and see what the next step is. But no, there was nothing wrong with this. Yes, we got moderately better phones, moderately better watches, moderately better earbuds, but they're still making incredible equipment. So why are we upset?
Yeah, it's what we always expect, life-changing stuff from Apple too. And there has been stuff that has been very important over the last few years. I think the switch from the Intel chips to their own silicon on computers was a world-changing thing for them and for the world of laptops in general. And it kind of shifted where Intel and others are going. But that's not as exciting as hey, this phone looks better than the other phone or something. So,
do you remember the doom and gloom crowd when they announced that they were going to shift away from Intel? There were so many people, even hardcore long-term Apple fans, were saying, "Oh, Apple's lost the plot, and there's no way a cell phone chip is going to work inside of a PC." And they did it. They did it. So why are we believing that they forgot how to do that? They're extremely good at execution. They just need time.
And I'm not saying that. Also, I'm not saying the Vision Pro is a failure either. I've been playing around with when I reviewed it. What it is it is very much the first iPhone, and the first iPhone was a crappy device. It was power. It had Edge cellular, right? It didn't have 3G.
That's right.
It didn't have an app store because they didn't even fully launch that. It was just an idea of a thing. And back then, Apple was able to quickly turn around and be like, okay, here's the iPhone 3G. Now we have 3G, and then the 3GS was the point where I feel like the App Store was there, things started getting really good, and it took a while to get going. Vision Pro will need some time, is what I think, but having tested that thing and used that thing, I see the vision, whatever they're aiming for with spatial computing, I could see how that could be something. And also, we are getting very close to Meta Connect 2024, where Meta is expected to show off their prototype AR headset, and I do feel like that is something a lot of people are spending billions of dollars to get towards, but it's hard to see what that will actually be like. I think the Vision Pro is a realer version of what spatial computing could actually look like than the stuff we've seen from Meta so far. How do you are you guys excited at all about the idea of augmented reality glasses?
I'm way more excited by AR than by VR. I mean, VR was always a gimmick for me. It was a game that some people couldn't play, like myself, because I would always get dizzy. But AR, going back to HoloLens, going back to even what Google Glass was supposed to be, that did not end up being, that's what I want. If you can give me a device that would overlay useful information on the real world, yes, please. And if you can make that in something that doesn't require me to carry 20 pounds of equipment, fantastic. So I think there's going to be a breakthrough. I don't know who it's going to come through. Honestly, this is one of those weird times where a small company could redefine the market by coming up with a missing link, and we don't even know what the missing link is yet. For good AR.
That's the thing. Just having looked at this industry for so long, there are rare cases of that. The big screen, the guys, the folks who developed this app for just watching movies in VR. They released a headset, and it's a really, really nice headset with a micro OLED display and everything. But it's also crazy expensive, and it is something for very niche group of VR users. But I don't know if like I guess we're in a weird spot, right? Like, I don't know if anybody can come in and be like, okay, we have a full design. We could get access to the displays and the hardware that can do better than the big companies. I do feel like the smaller players are completely shut out of this because Meta has already invested tens of billions of dollars in VR before it has like fully taken off for them. We also know like I'm sure Vision Pro has taken billions of dollars of development for Apple too. So I don't know. I don't know where it's all going to be. AR glasses, do you think like Padre, is it something you want to wear all day? Is that your vision, or is it just like something you'd want to have around to wear in the office to help you work?
By the time a commercial set of AR glasses are available, I will have to wear glasses. So and I would not mind it being in a set of AR glasses. Yeah, I would wear it every single day. I absolutely would wear it every single day. Even if it meant I had to be plugged in while I was sitting down to provide power, maybe a little performance boost, I would do it. I mean, I see so much possibility with smart overlays. Now, there needs to be breakthroughs in screen resolution and size. There needs to be breakthroughs in power efficiency. There needs to be breakthroughs in battery technology. And honestly, there needs to be breakthroughs with processing power, because the amount of processing you're going to have to do on every single headset is going to be a significant amount, and you cannot rely on being connected to the cloud. So, but that's coming, right? I mean, we're seeing that. We're seeing an exponential increase in the type of processing that we'll need for AR. We are seeing companies develop really nice micro OLED screens. We're even seeing companies getting really frugal with power usage. So I honestly think it's just a matter of time. Give it 10 years. 10 years, and I think AR would be everywhere.
But you're aligning it to the point where you will be wearing glasses. So you want that like timeline to sync up. Would you willingly now start wearing these glasses just for the AR? Because I feel like that is a killer problem for this tech. Like, I'm very intrigued by them. I also like VR and everything. But the problem with the Vision Pro and everything is it's a thing you have to put on your head and your face, and you have to worry about weight and balance and everything. And even if somebody comes up with like a perfect pair of like hipster looking glasses that can do AR stuff, will people actually want to wear glasses just for that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The advantage is too great to not. If you're a professional and your colleagues are wearing AR glasses and they're getting call outs, just super simple, names of people in the crowd, so that as they're doing their meet and greet and they're doing the networking, they have the name, they have a little bit of personal information that they might have on the person in their personal Rolodex, and they can do that meet and greet in a better way. That is an incredible advantage over someone who's trying to just use their memory. I mean, that's a super simple thing to do, but that is a insurmountable advantage if you're in a competitive market.
For sure. It feels like, I guess that's for a very specific person, right? Like politicians and celebrities will usually have a handler that will be like, hey, this is this person, they did this for you. I could see that. I could see that being useful. But I don't know. Anthony, I know you go between wearing glasses and not wearing glasses. So how are you feeling about this?
Well, so I'm wearing contacts right now. And maybe the
people
AR
literally will jam things into their eyes to stop wearing glasses. So,
although, I mean, I should say my origin story with contacts was that, I mean, I was playing basketball while wearing glasses, and my glasses got knocked off, and I stepped on them, and I was like, you know what? As we discussed running earlier, there are certain activities where it's better not to wear glasses.
It's true.
That is where I wear contacts.
It's true. I would be more worried about a stray elbow hitting my contact while it's in my eye and getting glass shards in my eye, but that doesn't happen, right? Like the contacts are flexible enough that you don't.
That has. I mean, they broke. I mean, once in a while they've like torn, and then like
fun.
Has some issues,
That's
but
great.
like it's not. They're not glass. They're
Yeah.
I don't even actually know what the material is. But I think like I like the idea of AR. I mean, that is one of those things that just seems really cool. It feels like at this point I'm sort of taking it on faith that like there will be interesting use cases, because it feels like everything that we've seen so far, which is, mostly been using phones, and there have been like cool examples. I mean, Pokemon being like kind of the biggest one. None of that has like been as engaging to the extent that I would wear it every day, right? But I mean, that's so different. I think it feels like there's both the hardware challenges and then there's just, what actually does the interaction look like? And I mean, obviously a lot of companies are working on this. A lot of companies have different ideas about this. But I mean, one of the things I think about was just also I think a lot of people were sort of struck by this was like with the Vision Pro, the weird sort of like camera footage of your eyes. And just, I mean, obviously it's easy to make fun of that, but I think also how that speaks to like this confusion of like, well, this is a new experience. How do we sort of like do this in a way that feels natural, that it still feels like you're not totally disconnected from the real world. And I think you're going to see a lot of like weird, janky things like that, where people try things out, and when people are like, "No, I don't want that. That doesn't seem good."
That's not even camera footage of your eyes. That is a rendering, a 3D rendering of your face.
I stand corrected.
That's being projected onto the thing, but still, it's weird. It is very weird, but I'll tell you guys this. It's like, I've tested the Magic Leap AR headset, I've tested HoloLens, and the one that actually has stuff I want to use day to day is still the Vision Pro. Like, being able to, like, sit in front of, like, my MacBook, a computer, and turn it into a 200-inch screen that is, like, towering in front of me. It's an incredible experience, and also to have that alongside other windows and things happening. Like, the experience they've built, software-wise and, like, platform-wise, is really fascinating. I just can kind of see like Apple eventually moving to something where it looks like a standard pair of glasses and it's not just fake eyes looking at you from a freaking visor. I want to point out the Meta headset that we're expecting. I believe it's called Osiris is the code name. There have been like pictures of it. Zuckerberg had it in the background of one of his pictures earlier this year, and it looks like a chunky pair of hipster glasses. So I feel like that is what they're going for. Yeah.
Meta is naming their headset after the god of the dead.
I think, that's not the official name.
Okay.
Yeah. Not the official name. It's a code name.
Cool. All right. I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
I feel like that's it. I just literally wrote this thing up in Engadget. But it has a code name like that. And that's the idea. Chunky hipster frames. Yeah. Is that, would that be something? Would you guys see yourselves? I've worn thick glasses before.
I like wearing chunky glasses. I like thick frames. I think, yeah.
Chunky glasses are okay. I have no problem with the Vision Pro. I tried it. It's actually interesting, but that implementation would never work for me. The huge headset with the attached battery pack. Again, you give me a pair of chunky Ray-Bans, and I'll wear it all day. We're not there. We're just not there right now.
The headset, by the way, is called Orion. Orion AR glasses.
Okay. That's so much better.
So much better. Hey, listen, Osiris could be really, really interesting view of other things that we don't see in the real world. Orion glasses. There have been a couple. So Zuckerberg had it in like in his background. MetaConnect in 2022. He also showed off this like wrist-based device for controlling the AR glasses and the AR experience. So there's a lot of speculation that these things will go together, that you'll be wearing the glasses and do something with your wrists to get this control. Apple's also doing hand gesture control with the Vision Pro. So I feel like that could all fit together. Yeah.
Which way would you want to go? Would you want to go with physical controls or physical bands or camera identified motions?
I think it's going to have to be both. Like, one thing we have realized in looking at the Vision Pros, like there was that thing, the Marvel experience, which was kind of cool, but you realize playing a game or something like a game with the Vision Pro is really clunky because the hand gesture recognition is really slow. So if I'm holding like Captain America's shield on a Quest or a VR headset, it feels instant because it can track exactly where that controller is. The Vision Pro does not do that. So it feels really, really clunky and slow. So I could see the advantages of having both, maybe sell the headset and then have the controller separate for the people who need the additional interaction stuff,
Okay. That's fair.
Anything? Okay. So that was Apple, and, we're going to have a lot of thoughts. I'm sure people will be talking about it on Twitter for a while. We did mention the presidential debate, and a couple of things came out of that, right after, the Harris Trump debate. Taylor Swift officially endorsed the Harris-Walz campaign, and also mentioned that AI imagery that was used by the Trump campaign was one thing that pushed her towards being very very open about her choice and her commitment to like a specific candidate. I just found that kind of interesting. This is certainly not the first time, an artist has responded to like AI versions of themselves, but this is like a very, I guess the term is F around and find out, right? Like the Trump campaign did this thing and used this image without her approval and did it just to show like, hey, look, this image says Taylor Swift supports us. That's good, right? And the immediate repercussion there is that she's like, no, thank you. And also screw AI. And I'm very clear about who I am supporting. Yeah. Thoughts on this?
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily, I can't claim to know what's going on in Taylor Swift's mind, but I mean, she did endorse Biden in 2020, and I think there was an assumption that she was going to endorse Biden/Harris at some point during this campaign, and she presumably timed it for the debate already. So I think also what the AI thing was also give her some cover, because I think there's often this question of like, well, artist, like, why don't you just shut up about politics? Who cares? Like, just let us have our own opinions. And so by saying, well, because of this AI stuff, like, I need to step out, not because I think you should be, so excited to hear my opinion, but because there's been this misrepresentation. So it's not me telling you how to vote. I'm just correcting the BS that's already out there. I'm not saying that's not true.
It's good cover.
Yeah. But it also like gives cover essentially too.
I agree. It's good cover. And also like, I'm not a big Taylor Swift fan, whatever her fans can love her. I can understand why she is super popular. But one thing about like not really coming out and supporting a specific candidate in 2020 did rub me the wrong way, especially when it's like we kind of saw how things went with the other guy.
No, she did. She supported Biden in 2020. Okay. But see, this is also the interesting thing. She endorsed Biden. It was closer to the closer to the election. And I think the other thing was that in 2020, Taylor Swift was an incredibly popular artist.
Yep.
I think in 2024, she's the most famous artist in the world.
Yeah.
For a variety, I think because of like Eras Tour, because of like the Travis Kelce relationship, I think there has been this fixation on whether or not she was going to endorse Biden in a way that didn't really exist in 2020. Because when that speculation started, I was like, wait, did she endorse Biden in 2020? I had to go back and look. Like, I guess she did. I don't know if that ever really registered.
It came really late. I do, because I remember the run up to it being like, what are a lot of the major artists thinking? And she was not saying anything for a long while. So there's that. I agree with you. It's cover, but also it does seem like I'm sure she's pissed. I'm sure. She's pissed.
I wouldn't be happy about it either.
Yeah,
there's an angle to the story, which is I mean she's a very savvy person, so of course she's known about the development of AI. She's seen a lot of the fakes. I'm sure that her people are keeping her abreast of that. But it seems like the thing that really ticked her off was that there was no official announcement from the Trump campaign of, this is AI, please stop doing that. We don't need more disinformation. I think if they had done that, she would have stayed quiet. She would have done the same thing that she did in 2020, which is wait until it was right before the election so that it couldn't be seen that she's swaying. But this was, this is FAFO. This is incredibly popular woman. Yeah. I'm sorry.
But also specifically the Trump campaign, like using it too. It was like you couldn't even wait for them to deny it because they were like, they saw this thing happen and like just posted it. So
So I get that.
You saw what Trump posted on Truth Social today, right?
Yeah, we did.
All caps. I hate Taylor Swift.
He's not mad. Cool. Don't tell everyone I'm mad online.
At least he's not threatening to impregnate her and take care of her cats. So I mean, I guess that's a plus.
Is the right wing okay? I don't know about any of this. Also, out of this too, immediately after the debate, there were a lot of immediate conspiracies that Kamala Harris was wearing an earpiece.
That's so
disguised as earrings. And this was really fascinating to see too, because it's funny to see like a I guess something like this just like come out of thin air, and just form and became a thing like a lot of people were talking about by the morning. The debate ended at like 10:30 p.m. Eastern. By the morning, this became a very regular thing a lot of people were talking about. It was specifically people thought they were using Nova's H1 audio earrings, and we covered this in Gadget, and it's like these devices don't even exist. Yeah. They're not similar, but also they don't exist. This company, it doesn't seem like has actually ever shipped these headsets. Their Kickstarter page seems like it's just dead. Yeah, she's just using, expensive, nice Tiffany earrings, but nothing like an earpiece. Just fascinating. We also pointed out, like, this has happened for pretty much every Democratic debate going back to Obama. Like, there was rumors that Obama was wearing an earpiece, that Biden was wearing an earpiece, that something was happening. That it could not be that the Republican candidate was, like, losing against this person. So I just find that kind of funny. I don't know.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
This is less tech related, but I mean, the other rumor, right, was that she'd gotten the questions ahead of time, which you were like, what secret was hidden in those? Yes, you will be asked about the economy. Yes, you will be asked about immigration. Like, I think not to like give this getting a little bit into a tangent, but just the earpiece thing has less to do with tech and more just like, frankly, like somebody had a really bad debate and people were desperate to come up with excuses.
How dare somebody be prepared for a debate with very, very obvious questions that would be asked to them, at that debate. Let's wash our hands of this a little bit, and let's go to Leo for another word from our sponsor.
This episode of This Week in Tech brought to you by ZipRecruiter. A service is solid when it gets great word of mouth, and that's why I wanted to let you know what people are saying, people like us, about our sponsor, ZipRecruiter. The marketing manager at NextKey said, the number one reason we love ZipRecruiter is because it's so fast and easy. The CEOs of Walz Need Love said, I posted a job on ZipRecruiter and found my lead graphic designer within just a few days. The CEO of a little company you may know called Twit says, with ZipRecruiter, we find great candidates fast. The takeaway, if you're hiring, ZipRecruiter excels at finding qualified candidates. Yes, fast. Right now, you can try it free at ZipRecruiter.com/twit. ZipRecruiter's powerful matching technology identifies top talent for your roles quickly. And immediately after you post your job, it starts showing you qualified people for it. That's the thing that's quite a relief to us. You're down a person, and that means more work for you, and you still have to do the hiring, and then you see a great qualified candidate like after you post almost immediately, and you go, hallelujah, thank you, ZipRecruiter. And 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. That should be the quote. Hallelujah, thank you, ZipRecruiter. See why ZipRecruiter is the hiring site employers prefer most. That's based on G2. Try it free at ZipRecruiter.com/twit. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Please use that address so they know you saw it here. ZipRecruiter.com/twit. Now, on with the show.
Okay, enough of politics. Let's get back to something we can all agree on. The PlayStation 5 Pro is $700, and I think that's insane. That's just wild to me. Padre, thoughts on this thing?
Okay, so yes, it's a lot of money. It really is a lot of money.
So much money.
It is so much money. However, I am of the PC Master Race generation, and I will spend 3 times as much as that to build my perfect rig. So I mean, I'm not going to hate on it. I will say that between the $700 PS5 and the sub $700 top of the line Steam Deck, I'm taking the Steam Deck every single time.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, you can say, well, but Sony's got the games. Well, if you've got the games and you've got the regular PS5, you don't need this. This isn't. They keep talking about how they're going to add textures. Textures haven't really changed in the last 5 years. The quality of the game and how it looks and plays hasn't really changed in the last 5 years. So this seems to be a refresh that is only appealing to the people who want bragging rights, which I hate.
Bragging rights, also, I guess, the ability to run essentially like 60 FPS, but also with the good graphics from the quality settings. Like the PlayStation 5 Pro is, 4 years old at this point, or the PlayStation 5 is 4 years old at this point. And that whole generation, like everybody's saying, like, we'll have 4K quality graphics, we will have things like ray tracing, we will have 60 FPS. The problem is you can't get it all at the same time, right? The first run of Xbox Series X titles and PlayStation 5 titles all have the performance versus quality choice. You could have the quality setting when I played Spider-Man Miles Morales, like you can have nice ray tracing, better lighting, better textures and stuff, 4K rendering. It wasn't always 4K, but you could have the ray tracing, 30 FPS. But if you get rid of the ray tracing, if you get rid of the large graphical load stuff, you can play a much smoother 60 FPS version of the game. And it makes a huge difference for Spider-Man, where you're swinging around the city and you want to move quickly, you want to move smoothly. Like, I felt the difference there. And I think that was one of the first things that really cooled me on this entire generation. It's like, we were supposed to get 4K gaming with a 60 FPS. I never thought that was totally possible. I'm more of a PC gamer, but I'm like a practical PC gamer. Like, don't need me some 4K. Just give me 1440p, good 1440p, but a good frame rate, a good solid frame rate, and also get me the graphical stuff that you can fit in alongside that. Anthony, is this all Greek to you? Do you understand why? Like, what even like?
The only thing with numbers that I understood was $700, which
$700 bad
is not. I don't know. I mean, it's less than an iPhone. I will say. Since Padre brought up a Steam Deck, I will say the other times I've been on Twit and console gaming has come up, I've just been like embarrassed that I have nothing, and now I can say that I do have a Steam Deck.
Yay!
And I'm very happy about that.
Wait, did you get one of the discounted units?
No, I did not. No, I got it was I can't even remember what the upgraded the new
OLED.
Generation but slightly better.
The OLED.
Yeah,
one.
Because they've got the 500 gigabyte decent model for like $350 now.
That's insane.
That's crazy. Yeah.
With the old LCD screen.
With the old, correct.
That's still a good screen. Still pretty. I think that was an IPS screen. Still good stuff. But yeah, my thinking is like, this PlayStation 5 Pro, it's not for everybody. It's certainly for a very niche type of PlayStation player. But also, it's been 4 years since the PlayStation 5 launched, and it just feels like, I don't know. Okay, you get a better GPU. I'm also surprised they didn't really. It is mainly a GPU upgrade in many ways. I don't believe it's a CPU upgrade. So you're running a better GPU on essentially the same CPU. Seems weird to have that essentially 4 years later. A couple other things. Doesn't have a disk drive. So I feel like
you can buy it separately. Yeah,
you can buy it separately for a lot of money. But the pro level player who would go for something like this would probably also want a disk drive too. So this is not really a $700 device. This is that money plus the cost of the disk drive. I have to look that up again, but it's more than I'd want to pay for a standalone disk drive. And
Keith's 512 in the Discord room is saying that it's still not 4K. It's upscaled. So they're just using the GPU power to upscale. Exactly. So, and actually, I remember at the very beginning when the rumors of this version were coming out, there was a whole group saying that, it's going to support 8K, native 8K. I'm thinking, there's no possible way. Are you out of your minds?
It's they did say it would support 8K in some instances. I remember 8K was a thing that was on the box.
Like the test pattern. It will support an 8K.
It will support a test pattern. That is a whole. Once we start talking about super high resolutions, yes, folks, it is clear. Yes, this is not native 4K rendering. There's no RTX 4090 in this system. It sounds like it's a higher level AMD GPU that's happening now, like a newer version of AMD's hardware. But also, you know what AMD's hardware has been really bad at? Stuff like ray tracing, stuff like playing in 4K natively too. So. Just kind of rough. This is it's the best console experience somebody can buy, so I can understand that.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people saying, "Oh yeah, you could build a gaming PC for close to that." Not really, because like the GPUs you really want to buy are like
the GPU would be
$600 alone. Yeah,
exactly.
So that's $500 $600 for a GPU, $300 to $400 for the CPU, plus everything else. So you're spending $1,500 to $2,000 for a good gaming computer, basically. And I can see the appeal here. It does make me wonder, do you guys think like the PlayStation 6, whenever that appears, I guess this almost sets a new baseline price. Like, I would not be surprised if PlayStation 6 was just like, hey, $600. That's what we're doing now, at the very least, right? They've done it before. It didn't work out well for them before, but
Well, I have sort of a basic question, which is, has there been sort of that pro kind of tier or model for previous? And has that price difference been roughly the same? There
was a PlayStation 4 Pro, and there were also like the newer Xboxes as well.
Xbox, correct.
The Xbox One X.
And right, of course, yeah.
So that did happen. They did have a slight premium, but the Pro was like $400, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it was not. We did not get past $500. So yeah, this is a whole new territory. It reminds me of, like, I don't know, the 3DO era. I remember that thing. That thing was $700 in the 90s.
Was awesome. Yeah.
I don't know if awesome is the word I'd use, but I remember it being $700 in the 90s.
Awesome in the sense that they were literally taking the hardware out of arcade machines and dropping it into your living room. It wasn't an emulation. It was, no, that's the hardware. Just put it in there. That's why it was so expensive.
Just put it in there. I mean, Neo Geo was that for me. Like, I could see why Neo Geo was so expensive. Yeah.
I think whether or not this becomes the new price point is going to depend on how Microsoft and more likely Nintendo respond. Mm-hmm. If they look at this and they say, hey, if people are willing to spend $700 plus on a top tier PS5, then the next Nintendo Switch Uber Duber, whatever they're going to call it, is going to go for $600. And Microsoft releases their next Xbox and it sells for $1,000. So that will determine whether or not this pricing point is sustainable. I don't want to
feel like we're creeping there. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. We are definitely creeping, and I don't want to dump all over the console heads. If you play PS5 games and you love PS5 games, this will be a better experience. Mm-hmm. And if you've got the cash, it will be. But I mean, as a casual gamer, there's no.
No. Well, as a casual gamer, you have so many other better options now, too. Like, if you want to dabble in PC gaming, get a Steam Deck. You can hook that up to TV, dock it to TV, and still have a pretty good experience. You mentioned a couple of things there, Padre. Like, there is a new Xbox Series X, which is $600, has a 2 terabyte drive, but also is just an Xbox Series X in a slightly sparklier color, I believe is the thing. I don't think Nintendo will ever do this. I think Nintendo is a company where I'm looking like, I could see a hard line for them, $400, maybe creeping up to that point. But the PS5 Pro is not going to be a system for everybody. I don't think anything past 600 is going to be for everybody. And Nintendo's whole pitch is like, we make a thing that everybody, it's family gaming. Everybody can buy it. I bought the OLED Switch like an idiot because I wanted the best looking Switch games that I could.
How do you like it? I was thinking about it.
I love it. Listen, it's way too expensive, and also we are going to learn more about a new Switch hopefully soon. But playing, Tears of the Kingdom on an OLED screen, playing like any of those games where there's so much bold color and everything. Like I'm an OLED fanatic, so if you put OLED in something, I will probably like lean towards getting it. Yeah. Well, it just looks better. But yeah, I could see Nintendo going to 400, but never, because they're not chasing the same hardware. They're chasing a whole different vibe of like, we want portable gaming meets actual console gaming. I could see Nintendo doing some weird stuff, maybe being like, okay, it's 400 now, but also the dock adds a little more graphical power or something. Like
that's the show title. Put an OLED in it.
Put an OLED in it, baby. Sold. But I do feel like for the Xbox and for PlayStation, $600 doesn't seem like it's that out of the question, because it
should be, though. It really should. We gotta stop.
The GPUs are expensive. Like, GPUs are expensive. Hardware has gotten more expensive. The processing, the actual ability to even create these tools, this hardware, it's harder now. Like, it's harder to ship this stuff. They're aiming for finer nanometers now. Like, the actual design process of these chips is tougher. So I guess realistically, I buy that more than games creeping up to like $70-$80. Yeah.
It also just makes me wonder if that as like prices creep upwards, you start to see more tiering as well, and you get more like basic console Pro, and then maybe there's an additional level above that to get at the really high, like, big spenders.
I can see that.
We kind of have that. I mean, there's the mobile gamers, so the people who only game on their phones. There's the people who are using Steam to play games like me, which is casual FPS, mostly strategy and RTS type games. And then there's the sort of the Twitch players, the real first-person shooter players who are going to go for the consoles. So yeah, I mean, I know where my comfort point is. I know the type of machine and the type of hardware I need, and I do not need top of the line. It's fun when I get to review a top of the line and I get to see what all the candy looks like when I turn it on, but that's not my gaming experience. So and I know that about myself. I don't need top tier graphics. I don't need a crazy frame refresh rate. I just need a game that's going to engage me for 20 hours.
And in that case, Steam Deck works perfectly. Like, Steam Deck's hardware is, again, AMD hardware too, I believe, right? So it plays most of the games. Anthony, I'd recommend to you Tactical Breach Wizards as a great game to look into.
Breach Wizards.
It's a great fiction game. It's a world where magic is like real, and also they use it for military stuff, and it's a tactics game too. So that's my shout out for the week.
Wait, Anthony, what kind of games do you like?
I mean, mostly old adventure and RPG games. I mean, I've spent like 150 hours now on Baldur's Gate 3. That's been most of my gaming this year. Yeah.
Are you like a Sim City type person?
I'm Civilization more than Sims.
Civ. Okay. If you like Civ, look up a game called Oxygen Not Included by Klei. Klei. It's always on sale. Just try it. Play it for 10 hours and see if it catches.
This is an easy 10 hours.
Just play for 10 hours.
10 hours is like one day. So
I'm very happy with my Steam Deck. I will say that now I am starting to be like, maybe I should get a console because, now that people are like, I know, Devinder, you never gave up on Blu-rays, but now I'm like, oh, shoot, yeah, I guess I should have like Blu-rays, and I don't want to just buy a separate Blu-ray player. Maybe I should just get a PlayStation.
Maybe, I mean, they're going to get cheaper. Well, actually, no, they raised the prices. So, no, even the base PlayStation has gotten more expensive in Japan and elsewhere. So this is a crazy generation that we're living in now, too. Shout out, also, Anthony, shout out to Disco Elysium. I feel like that's a game I've probably recommended to you.
About that.
That is up your alley, like old school adventure games with great writing and stuff. Just good stuff. Let's see here. There was also a story, which I feel like has not been reported that much, but Facebook admitted to scraping every Australian adult's public photos and posts to train their AI with no opt-out option, and also posts regarding, kids that were in their timelines. Fascinating that I saw this reported from ABC in Australia, where they initially asked the Facebook executive, if this was happening. They asked Meta's global privacy director, Melinda Claybaugh, if this was a thing. They had to press them, and they eventually admitted, yes, in fact, we are doing this. And also because Australia is not tied to the EU's privacy rules, they didn't have to offer an opt-out option. Thoughts on this, guys? It just seems like this is everything we hate about AI creation.
And if we should, I'm pretty sure that it says Australian adult in that headline because it's a story from ABC Australia, but I think most American adults are included in that group too, and I think basically just except for people in the EU who opted out, it basically includes you, and I mean in some ways this was something that it wasn't exactly a surprise in the sense that Meta had already basically said we're scraping all your public content, but I think this was the most explicit they'd been about kind of just how extensive that was. I mean, I'm not 100% sure that they've actually. Well, I mean, I guess there's no reason they wouldn't have. I mean, it seemed like to a certain extent they were saying yes, we believe we have the permission to do all of that, and we're going to do all of that. I don't know how much of that has actually happened already.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of these companies too, everyone's talking to Google, hey, how much of YouTube are you training Gemini on, folks? And there's a lot of controversy around OpenAI, training things around YouTubers as well. The excuse we hear from all these companies is hey, we can't build these AIs if we're not just taking your content, right? We really need to build these AIs. And I'm thinking, nah, actually, you should at least be paying somebody.
Worst
you should at least
excuse
be being
ever.
more open to this. Yeah. Thoughts on this, Padre?
Look, I'm in the EU, and basically we all opted out.
Yeah,
and that's why Meta has not deployed any of its AI scraping in the EU because they know that it's a legal landmine. It's a legal minefield. I have stopped posting anything to any Facebook property, Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, all of it, for what? I think it's going on 10 years, 11 years now. It's precisely for this reason, because I know no matter what they say, no matter how many times they say they're gonna respect our privacy, that at some point they're just going to do what they want to do. And it's too late. Post facto, I cannot stop them from training a model on my data.
Right.
So they don't get my data. And I think that's really the only thing we can do. There's going to be congressional hearings about this at some point. They're going to get dragged through the mud. Their PR department's going to have to work overtime, and it's going to go back to normal. The only way it's going to change is if people, us, the users, stop giving them what they want, which is our content. And at some point, all social media users are going to have to do this with all social media services. It's like, we want you to be in business. We know that you have a business model that requires you to sell our content to advertisers. However, there's a red line that you cannot cross or you will pay. And right now there is no or you will pay. It's, if you cross this red line, well, we're going to make you stop for 6 months.
I agree, although I would push back slightly and say, I mean, the fact that the example you used about the EU does suggest that, I know there's a lot of different opinions about how effective a lot of this privacy regulation is in the EU and what the unintended consequences are, but it has caused Facebook to change its behavior, at least in that region. And so I think that some level of government regulation, I think, in other countries in the US, I think is appropriate, even if we don't necessarily have a lot of faith in the people who might write that legislation.
It's a start.
I think the other challenge is that, as every major tech company wants to become an AI company, there's this question of, well, okay, where do you draw the line, right? You said you haven't posted to any Facebook property in a while, and I think that's laudable. But then there's a question of like, well, okay, well, we're going to post this video to YouTube. Like, is Google going to train, and I don't, as somebody who's in the content business, so like, I don't like that, but like, does that mean we can't post to YouTube? And, ad infinitum, I think it's good for people to be conscious of where they post and to, not support platforms that they think are doing shady stuff. But I think also, like, if you want to be online, like on some level, you're probably going to be posting somewhere that is probably going to be fed into an AI training machine. And that doesn't mean we can't be mad about it. That doesn't mean we can't try to do something about it. But I think it's tough to figure out exactly where to draw the line.
It's a sad reality, I guess, of where we are right now. It's just like the countries were not fully prepared with privacy legislation for this stuff too. Like the EU has been doing a lot of this work for a while now. But related to this, Ed and Gadget also covered the story about Australia's Prime Minister basically floating the idea that they want to ban social media for children. Facebook and a lot of other sites are already, you have to be 13 or older to use them. But I think the thinking here is like for kids between 14 and 16. Like perhaps there should be a way to institute that as well. Do you guys think that is a potential, or at least a potential thing to help kids from, I don't know, the worst of these social media sites? Or is it just kind of useless because all their friends are going to be using them anyway?
I am very, very concerned about any issues that are around childhood development, because we all know, we know for a fact that those early years are extremely important for the skills and the social relatability that individuals will develop into their adulthood. And we already know that the screen generation, I won't say have been harmed. I will say that they react very differently and they interact very differently. So this is okay for me. I don't think we know enough to say which way it has to go. I would bring in someone like Larry Magid, who has been working on safe children environments on the internet for, 2 decades now. You need people like that who actually understand the issues that are at play. Should children restrict their use of the internet? Yes, they should. Should adults be involved with what their children see and don't see on the internet? Yes, they should. Should governments be involved in making sure that parents have the tools to be able to do that? Yes, they should. But right now, nobody has a solution that you can look at and say, oh, that's the way. I do laud the Australian government for getting at it, but right now, this whole thing, because I've been following this pretty closely, this seems more like this is something that people will like, so I'm going to say it. It doesn't seem like it's something that I'm doing because I've got a good plan to deal with it.
Yeah. Not too surprising there.
The other thing I do wonder about, and this gets into areas where just, because I'm not a social scientist or a psychologist, like it sort of can be hard to kind of pull things apart. But I am wary of I think sometimes there can be this tendency just to blame social media for everything. And so I think it's trying to hold these truths of it does seem like there's evidence that social media can be very harmful, particularly to kids who are, emotionally vulnerable already. But, at the same time, there's, all this stuff happens in a context. And I think to part of the point Padre was making, is this just saying that you want to, kind of blaming social media because that's something that you can either
Right.
this will never get passed, or it gets passed because it's easier to solve that than maybe some of the broader societal issues that are also, creating emotional distress in children.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a convenient thing to say, just ban social media. But also, I'm thinking, like, I have family members who are like teenagers now, and like high school is tough, high school, middle school is tough. I cannot imagine like going through that and also like having to deal with the hell of Instagram and everything. Very happy I went through a lot of that in the mid 90s, like as the internet was budding up and also social media was not even a thing. But even then, like, there were always fears about the internet and meeting people on the internet, and it's so terrifying and scary. And I think a lot of those fears were always a little oversold too. But we also know that social media, especially like a company like Meta that knows like Instagram is harming teenagers and did very little to stop that. Just does not make me feel very good about it in general.
I will say that I have taken to regularly taking weeks off of social media, and I know that hurts my following. I know that hurts how much engagement I get, but I feel so much better after I do that. Seriously, it does help. At first it was one of these things like, okay, I'll try it for a week, I'll try it for a month, and now it's, I'm going to spend the entire summer offline, and I've had some of the best times in the last 2 decades because I've done that. So if I, an adult who kind of understands how the internet's working and where the toxic stuff is, can benefit from taking a break every once in a while, how much more could a young person who's still trying to figure those things out benefit from taking a social media or internet holiday every once in a while?
For sure. I guess we can think about it like letting kids drive, letting kids drink, almost like letting them willingly do something that could harm them. It's funny. It's funny how that even works. Like, I'm thinking just about like the idea of news in general too, like the news that kids are exposed to these days. My 5-year-old daughter was just getting ready for school one day and she heard the line, "They're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats."
Oh no!
She heard that. And I don't listen to news around my kids too much because the world is on fire. And also, they will just hear how bad everything is, But she heard that one specific line. She was like, "What? What? What is that?" And she was like, "Who's that guy?" She immediately said, "That guy should be banned." I think she got that word from Minecraft videos because she's a big Minecraft head right now. We're like, no, Sophia, he's running for president, so he cannot be banned. And she just said to me, 5-year-old, she was like, "I don't think he should be president." That's the only exposure she's had to him. So, but anyway, it's weird how media works for kids. It's weird how social media works too. When it comes to the AI stuff, by the way, let's take a step back to here. I want to point to an article that I really enjoyed from Christopher Mims over at the Wall Street Journal. He wrote about what is AI best at now, improving products you already own. I'm interested, how are you folks actually using AI these days and AI tools? We're still waiting for stuff like Apple Intelligence, but Copilot has been around for a while. I know a lot of specific programs have AI, powered features. Is there anything either of you guys actually like to use that is AI powered, or are we just like waiting for it to get better?
I don't. And I mean, Apple Intelligence was the first one where I felt like, oh, maybe, and again, it's what Mims is talking about is like, do you go somewhere else, or does it just make the experience of a product that you actually use better? I think that I've played around with ChatGPT. I mean, my favorite thing is always just like typing my name into it and seeing what it says about me.
What does it say?
And it just pulls some Google results, but it's usually pretty flattering, so I like that. But I think it never. It seems like a lot of times the most common example I see for ChatGPT, right, is people using it as Google, which is like, again, I just think it's absolute psycho behavior. Like that is
not the feature they want to build. Yeah,
that is.
I hate that Bing. When I use Bing, if I accidentally scroll up too much, it automatically goes into Copilot. I'm like, no, stop! I don't want that. Okay, so I actually do have use cases.
Okay,
we have been using generative AI on the AV side to create copyright safe images that we can use on some of the articles that we publish.
Okay,
especially when we're dealing with art and religious art that
so
we need to post
when you're
about.
saying we, you mean the Vatican?
Yes,
Okay.
Vatican and the Desert Korea. I've also been part of a small team that is looking at ways of safeguarding academic integrity in our institutions of higher education, specifically our universities. I've been working with a professor over at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles to develop curriculum that is AI resistant, because they're all very worried about students just using generative AI to write essays and submit work. So we came up with a couple of different strategies that actually seem to be working, specifically asking students to use generative AI to write about the subject, the topic, the thesis that they're working on, and then they personally have to go back and they have to critique what that generative AI has written about the subject, using what they actually know about the subject and the sources. And what we found was that while AI is very good at generating stuff, it's not very good at critiquing that stuff. So they can't use a different AI to then write the stuff that they need to write in the critique of the original AI. So those have been things that we've been doing. We've been using AI, and we've also been working on ways to defeat the use of AI. And I think that pretty much sums up the Catholic Church. Yeah.
I want to hear more about this and also tell you guys like what I'm doing these days. But let's head back to Leo for a word from our sponsor.
Let me interrupt just for a moment, Devendra. Leo Laporte here on vacation, but I had to come back to tell you about an old friend, a site I'd used for years to get answers on the Tech Guy show. Show today brought to you by Experts Exchange. I don't know how I lost track, but I'm so glad I found them again, especially in this era of AI-generated nonsense. I just read somewhere that almost half of everything on the internet now is AI-generated. That's terrible. Wouldn't you rather join a network of trustworthy and talented real people, tech professionals, to get industry insights and advice from people who are actually using the products in your stack instead of paying for expensive enterprise-level tech support? As the tech community for people tired of the AI sellout, Experts Exchange is ready to help carry the fight for the future of human intelligence. Experts Exchange gives you access to professionals in over 400 different fields. I mean, everything you could ever want to know. Coding, AWS, Azure, DevOps, and on, including information advice on managing tech teams. Unlike other places, they don't snark at you. Duplicate questions are encouraged. That's fine. There are no dumb questions. The contributors there are tech junkies who get off, who enjoy graciously answering all your questions. No snark. Just good information from real experts. One member said, hey, I never had ChatGPT stop and ask me a question before. That happens on EE all the time. Experts Exchange is proudly committed to fostering a community where human collaboration is fundamental. Their expert directory is full of experts. You know why? Because experts love, but part of the pleasure, the joy of becoming expert in a field is being able to pass your knowledge down to others, to help others, to pay it forward. There are experts at Experts Exchange to help you find exactly what you need, including many who listen to our shows like Rodney Barnhart, VMware vExpert. Rodney's a Security Now listener. Edward Von Biljon, who's a Microsoft MVP and an ethical hacker. He can help you with your pen testing, plus Cisco design professionals, executive IT directors. I mean, they're all in there. And unlike other platforms which betray their contributors by selling the content back to train AI models, at Experts Exchange, your privacy has never been for sale. They stand against the betrayal of contributors worldwide. They have never and will never sell your data, your content, or your likeness. They block and strictly prohibit AI companies from scraping content from their site to train their LLMs. The moderators, great moderators, by the way, strictly forbid the direct use of LLM content in their threads. Experts Exchange is a place where experts go because they have a need, a desire to help you. It's a place you can go to get that help back. Experts deserve a place where they can confidently share their knowledge without worrying about a corporation stealing it to ensure shareholder value. And humanity deserves a safe haven from AI. Experts Exchange, join it today. They're so confident you're going to love it that they're going to give you 3 months free, no credit card required. That's right, 90 days free. Visit e-e.com/twit to learn more. e-e.com/twit to learn more. Experts Exchange. They never left, and they want you back. 90 days free, no credit card required. e-e.com/twit. Leave the AI guys behind. Get some real help from real people. Experts Exchange. Now, speaking of real people, I believe we have an entirely real panel today on Twit. Devendra.
Thank you, Leo. I want to shout out something that I've been using that I have found like to be surprisingly helpful, and that's Descript, which is the podcast editing platform.
Oh, yeah,
Descript.com. And it's one of those things where I started using it. I've seen a lot of people talk about it. I'm perfectly fine editing audio on my end. It's something I've done for a long time. It can be tedious. It can be annoying. I'm not an audio engineer. For the Engadget podcast, like we have a real producer who does a lot of the like real audio engineering work. But sometimes just got to get audio out there, and I want to sound good. And I found Descript to be really like the stuff it does. We once recorded an episode and somebody literally had a jackhammer going on outside their window. And we all thought like, this is unusable. We're not going to be able to do anything here. We put the source audio through Descript, and it has this studio filter that does a good job of making even crappy mics sound better. But it also has really good noise reduction capabilities, and it essentially just like muted that out.
Wow. Like you could, or could you hear
pretty well? Like you could tell there wasn't really clipping. You could tell there was occasional distortion of like it doing some leveling work, but it's listenable in a way that I thought it was like stuff I had to just throw out immediately before. So I think that was the thing that immediately sold me on that platform. And also the transcription is pretty good too. I used to use Rev for hiring human translators or transcribers, but I also read a lot about how badly that company treated its human workers, and a lot of us stopped supporting them after that. And I think like Descript, and also Rev is using AI transcription now too, but the idea that Descript is just like running this audio through the through its AI engine and getting pretty usable text that I still go in and do some quick edits, but that saved me like literally hours of my life. So it's allowed me to get transcriptions up for episodes. It's helped me with interviews, stuff like that. That's how AI I found to be useful.
So for the people who haven't used Descript before, I tested it. And it actually looked promising, but I saw an early version that I don't think was ready for use. It basically turns a video into like a Word document. So you've got the transcription, and then you can cut and paste and move things around. It will do all of the video editing. I did not know about the audio improvement.
It does that for audio too. So essentially audio projects can be done in the same way. Cool. You can edit a timeline if you want to, but you are basically just editing like text. So it makes it makes it easy for non-audio engineers to essentially make stuff too. Yeah.
That's very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, I don't want to sound like an ad for them. There are occasions where sometimes the tools just crash and things don't always work out so well. But I've been able to like go to an event, record stuff with the voice memos. To be honest, run it through Descript so it sounds like halfway decent.
Wow.
And publish that interview within an hour of like doing the interview. So it's sort of like empowering in a way, and I think that's what Microsoft and Apple want to think about, like when they're talking about like AI powered programs. But stuff like ChatGPT, stuff like the Copilot search, which is powered by ChatGPT, I just don't see. To me, that seems far less useful, and the idea that you can't really trust it just seems like a pretty search engine that you can't trust. Like that is less useful to me. AI imagery, I could see using it for blogs and things like that if you just need to put content out there. But I do think like that stuff is we're still trying to figure that out too, right? Because it's giving you copyright free images, right? Like images where you don't have to worry about it, but also they built their entire platform on like existing copyright that they're not paying for. So it's one of those weird things right now.
I mean, if they could build in a generative AI tool that would allow me to fix things that I messed up in recording and like have me saying things that I didn't actually say, but I could type it, that I 100% would use rather than having to reshoot when I mess up.
Shooting video.
Okay, I'm sold.
That's tough for video. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like one thing I was able to like, Descript does like AI voice generation. So there's a point where I wanted to retake a word, and I trained the little voice model on myself, and it did the AI voice, and it sounds like decent. It was just like one word that I sort of garbled, and it sort of fixed it and made it work well. So it's not a perfect platform. I'm sure there are others out there. That's just the one that's kind of worked for me. And as somebody who's been working in audio and knows how hellish and how hard it is to edit audio and to make audio sound good, to have a thing where I could just like throw it into this mysterious AI engine and have it just work. It's kind of miraculous. Yeah.
Okay. Devindra and Anthony, I want to ask both of you this.
Yeah.
We've all done our own editing. We've all kind of obsessed over our final product. Early on, when you were doing voiceover recordings, would you go through in your software of choice and remove all your breath noises and like remove pauses? Would you like spend an extraordinary amount of time just kind of perfecting stuff that people wouldn't be able to hear in the final product anyway?
I used to, but then I realized it actually makes it sound worse. It makes it sound inhuman in a way.
Yep.
Yeah. If you did that.
Too perfect. It's too sterile.
Too perfect.
Yeah. I usually remove the filler words, which I'm sure that people have been listening to. I use a lot of and likes. But I don't, there you go. But I don't normally remove breathing sounds unless it's really loud. Or if I'm coughing.
I was so self-conscious about breathing sounds, and you're editing with cans on, and so you can hear all those things, and I'm like, oh my god, I sound horrible. And the funny thing is, like the people who would listen to it, both versions, they say we can't tell we don't hear that because we're not listening on headphones, we're listening on speakers. It doesn't make a difference. Oh, sorry, that was a tangent.
No, it's I mean, I totally agree, and that's something you learn as a human, right? Like, oh, you think the perfect is removing all the extra stuff, but it turns out our ears, in many ways, I've heard from people that they actually prefer it when they hear the breath and they hear the full like you actually constructing words and things. Like it feels a little more natural to them, and I totally get that. Yeah,
now you know it's a human because there's so many videos out there that are using AI voices or computer voices that until they start adding breath noises into those AI productions, that's kind of our key.
You're giving them ideas.
Exactly.
This is their next upgrade.
Generative breath sounds.
It's listen, I'm not gonna say it again, but there's a bunch of stuff that the script does, and like you can literally choose like the length of the pause between like a word that you edit out. It does the automatic like junk word stuff too. So I would recommend taking a look at it. I don't know how it works for video stuff, but for text or for just plain audio is good. It even did a good job of like putting show notes together. I just like it can do that. I like writing my own stuff, but it did a pretty decent job of doing timestamps and show notes of stuff too. So yeah.
How good is it at like transcription of other languages?
I don't know.
Because I do so much of that. That's like half my day.
And that's another thing where AI could be useful too, like because it is running through translation engines and stuff too. So
I'll try that. Thank you.
Try it. I've not done much like translation stuff through that. In other news, we also saw the first successful commercial spacewalk, private spacewalk, by Polaris Dawn, using SpaceX's new EVA suits. A billionaire, Jared Isaacman, and a few SpaceX engineers went up and were able to perform that walk earlier this week. And also we saw this morning they landed safely back on Earth. I wasn't like following the story too closely, but just seeing the video and seeing the fact that they are also using like cool ass sci-fi spacesuits, it's one of those things that makes me think sometimes an Elon Musk project can be good. It's not him directly involved in SpaceX, but it is his money, unfortunately. Yeah.
I am more interested in the spacesuits. Because that has been a sticking point for space exploration for the longest time. It's difficult to create a suit that will both protect the astronaut and allow them enough mobility to be able to do fine motor work. So if he's created something that has that extra flexibility, fantastic. Right now, the gold standard for EVA suits belongs to Russia because they use a different system. They use a chrysalis system where you don't put on the spacesuit, you kind of get into it. It's basically a miniature spacecraft, and then they close the hatch on you. And I love those because they're so easy to get into and out of compared to a NASA or a SpaceX suit. But I mean, this is one of those places where more innovation is better. Hopefully, they can steal ideas from one another, and no one's going patent crazy because. Unless we've got a good way to get in and out of spacecraft, between spacecraft, and do repairs outside of spacecraft, we're still orbit bound.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. I think from what I've read, these suits have to be, they're tied essentially to life support stuff, so they're not like fully self-sustaining suits.
It's still pretty good. Yeah.
It's still pretty good. It's like an old style of the way we used to do spacesuits. But still, like these folks, this billionaire, they did manage to go further than any human has in 50 years away from the planet?
Basically, except for the moon missions, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's pretty wild. Thoughts, Anthony? Because I know you're a sci-fi guy. You're a sci-fi author.
I am.
What are you thinking here?
I mean, I always feel a little bit mixed about this because I do think that science fiction, this is one of the areas where science fiction has sort of a mixed, maybe it's, to a certain extent, has something to answer for because it's created this sort of fantasy of the kind of heroic, CEO who's going to lead us into space. And on the one hand, generally I think the work that SpaceX has done is good, and I'm excited for what they're doing. But I think that this idea that, all the excitement in space exploration is in the private sector, the idea that like Elon Musk is some kind of hero, I definitely don't subscribe to. I don't, there's something about the idea that, well, the fact that, Isaacman was able to do the spacewalk because he's rich, that leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But, it's at the same time, it's really great that after 50 years, we're back out there and we're able to do this. And, I also don't want to like minimize his accomplishment that, I mean, he did a spacewalk. That's really cool.
That's cool.
And even if, he sort of paid to do that, like that's still cool. So yeah, I feel conflicted. I mean, ultimately, I think on its own, it's good. It's like a very exciting thing, especially after, with the Boeing stuff, that there's kind of a setback on private space exploration. So it's great to see like things working. I don't necessarily think of it as much as like a SpaceX versus Boeing thing, although obviously SpaceX at this point
optics
has the
are
better
not great.
record.
Those poor Boeing astronauts are still stuck up there. So
yeah, but it's cool. I mean, it's exciting. I mean, I think to me, my hope is obviously like that we have, probably public programs that are really pushing and going out to these sort of new frontiers. And then presumably, it'll be private enterprise that kind of comes in and, turns it into something every day.
Mm-hmm.
He did do something that I am so happy happened. And that is because it went 1,400 kilometers away from Earth, almost 900 miles, it did pass through the Van Allen radiation belt. And for years, the conspiracy theorists have been saying the moon missions must have been faked because you can't get through the Van Allen belt without killing your astronauts. And so now it's like, okay, well, here you go. Here's one more checkbox you can take away.
I mean, I'm sure those folks will be like, "Oh, this is all staged too. Come on, come on." Like there's no winning. There's no winning.
No arguing
here.
with them. Yeah,
it's just all going to happen. I mean, I still think like we've seen like several NASA missions that they're planning for Mars too. Like they're more robot focused. They're more focused on rovers and other things like that too. And the older I get, I'm like, it does seem crazy to be sending humans to space. To be honest, like I do think we can accomplish more sending robots, but I don't want to kill the dream. I don't want to be the bad guy in Interstellar.
I'll kill it.
Like, yeah,
Mars is stupid.
Mars
is such
Nobody
a
wants
bad
to be on Mars.
idea.
Listen, if Elon Musk wants to go to Mars, because he really seems to, please,
Elon Musk can go.
He can go. Yeah. Show us, pave the way. Show us how Mars is. Once you
they have all these scenarios. Oh, they're going to terraform the planet. It's like, okay, look, yeah. Terraforming, sure. You want to send a bunch of nukes to melt ice? Okay, that's fine. But remember, the planet has no magnetic field, which means any atmosphere that you make is going to slowly bleed away.
And you have to live underground. Because
you'd have to live underground to avoid the radiation because there is no magnetic field that's going to deflect high energy particles away from the surface. The surface itself right now is so permeated with poisonous crystals that when they melt, you're going to die unless you have a completely isolated life support system. It's far enough away from the sun that you're not going to get enough power through solar cells, typical solar cells, to do daily operations. So anyone you send is going to die almost immediately. But other than that, I'm sure it'll be fun.
Yeah, Mars sucks. Mars sucks. Yeah. Fully agree.
There was a great piece in Defector, I think it was this past week, that was basically just like, we're never going to colonize Mars. And I still hold on to the dream, not out of anything rational, but just I think it would be great if we did. Probably not definitely not in our lifetimes. But I do think that fundamentally, I think the future of space flight is going to be much more robotics driven than it is going to be by humans. The
like
human side is
robots
gonna
may
be-
colonize Mars within a couple, I don't know, hundreds of years. It's going to take a chunk of time, but maybe that could happen. But sending people there seems like suicide missions because we can't get
The
them
moon
back too.
makes much more sense. The moon makes much more sense. And
Totally.
that actually could happen before I die.
Yeah, maybe it'd be something like maybe we will eventually get commercial flights that people can actually afford. I don't know. That would be kind of cool. Anything else on Polaris Dawn, guys? It's cool. I love
They
the
have
mission.
Good styling.
Good styling. The suits do look good. I cannot deny that the suits look like what I'd imagine like anime spacesuits would look like as I'd imagined them as a kid. So sure, yeah, I'll give him that.
I kind of want to make my own Polaris Dawn spacesuit for the next DEF CON. That looks pretty cool.
I mean, Halloween is right around the corner, so I don't know.
Exactly.
How are we going to test it out?
How are we going to test it out? That's a good question.
I just walked through Rome because the air here is smells so bad. You're going to want your own life support. Yeah.
Why is that? Is just from the weather at this point?
When you
or
have
are
a
there
city that's
fires?
this old with a significant homeless population, things don't smell great in the summer. It's yeah.
I
It's
hear
in New York
that.
where I can relate.
That's actually New York. You're from New York. You know this. Jeez.
It doesn't smell great. Summer in New York does not smell great.
There's a reason a lot of people leave New York, but you know what? I still miss it. I still miss all those things. We have a fun section that's going to come up towards the end of this. I would love some pop culture stories from you guys. But thank you both for dropping some stories in our doc here, too. And Anthony, you put in something that I thought was really cool when I read it from 404 Media. It's about right to repair for your body. It's called The Rise of DIY, Pirated Medicine. This is a story all about Four Thieves Vinegar Collective, this sort of like hacker group that is hacking medicine at like the basic level. Both like they've come up with software that can like sort of copy the chemical pathways that official drugs can, but also have the tools to make things themselves. This is fascinating. And I do feel like more so than like transhumanist stuff where people are like going to be becoming part robot. I feel like this is the thing that could potentially save lives, but it's also kind of dangerous too. How are you thinking about this, Anthony?
I think Padre actually put this in.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just talking about, I went through a phase where I was absolutely fascinated by everything CRISPR, the genetic editing tool. And
as you should
then
be.
I should be.
Wild.
And then I was fascinated by that Chinese doctor who actually used CRISPR on a baby to make them resistant to HIV and was thrown in jail for many years. So and he's out of jail now, and he
says
wants
he
to
doesn't
continue
regret
his
it.
work.
He says he doesn't regret
Doesn't
anything
regret
he
it
did.
at all.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm with you. Steampunk, sci-fi, we've all got the whole cyborg fixation because it makes sense. It's kind of something that we think we can obtain right now with the technology that we have. But editing the body or provoking particular responses when we want them, that is amazing to me. That's the stuff of sci-fi that we can actually do now. The fact that I can selectively turn on and off genes within my own biological makeup, I love that. I understand why we have a lot of caution built into that industry. I understand why we do things like tell doctors that they cannot continue with research, because there is such a huge potential of turning stuff on that will have extremely negative effects. But yeah, I think as technologies like CRISPR become accessible to, honestly, regular Joes, just people with even a modicum of knowledge of how to use it, it's going to happen. It's not a question of if it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It is becoming so easy to modify genetic makeup that within the next generation, you're going to have people who are going to be as interested in hacking the human genome as they are in hacking consoles 10 years ago.
It's fascinating. The potential is fascinating too, but I think if anybody has ever seen the anime series Full Metal Alchemist, things can go bad.
A little chimera
things can go real
going on,
bad.
you know. Okay. Yeah.
Little chimera here and there. I do think this opens up entirely new like pathways and things that are dangerous. But this specific story is cool because they're just like pharmaceutical companies are charging way too much for things that are really, really cheap to make. And what if we just literally open sourced the code and gave you the way to build these tools, things that could save your life? There's drugs for hepatitis C. I think they were talking about, which cost thousands of dollars to take per day, and you could just get it done cheaply. The idea
anyone having a glandular problem.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something you could turn on and off. Imagine, okay, this is my dream scenario. Someone develops a CRISPR technique that allows me to swap the taste of sugar for the taste of celery. So now I think celery tastes sweet. I mean, my goodness. I'd be healthy in a year.
Well, I mean, isn't that essentially what the stuff like Wegovy and the new like weight loss drugs essentially just like reduce your appetite, reduce your ability or your desire to want things, and that's immediately led to it leads to weight loss, it leads to better health effects. I know there are potential side effects that people are worried about, and we need to see the long-term effects of these things, but also like those drugs feel like miracle drugs. And also, you know what doesn't support them in America? Most health insurance companies. Correct. So you can go to a lot of sites and pay hundreds of dollars or buy them, at full price. But for people who do not have access to those things or who can't afford it, like these miracle tools are just like right there within their reach, and they're just so expensive. I see the potential here. Anthony, like as a sci-fi person, is this something you've ever thought of, this sort of idea of biohacking?
Of course. Yeah, I've thought about it. I think, two things come to mind. One is definitely like, in general, right, we're just like often very bad at predicting the effect on complex systems. And one of those complex systems is the Earth's environment, and the other is the human body. And so I would definitely do not want to be at the cutting edge of any of this stuff. I can be way behind. But obviously, yeah, the medication examples that you talk about seem really compelling. I also think about like, when AIDS was during the AIDS epidemic, I think there were a lot of people who were sick who were very much like fighting so that they could be trying all these experimental drugs and they were like, listen, I don't, I understand that there's a huge risks here, but like, what have I got to lose? And so I think specifically in those situations where, the other outcome is probably death. Like, by all means, like, yeah, like go to town to get access to everything that you can. Why not?
That's when people right now are like very much like, if you are facing some sort of terminal illness and there is a trial drug, a lot of people are desperate to access those trials and potentially see if it helps, because what could you lose at that point? So truly fascinating. This is a great piece, and do want to shout it out because I think 404 also 404 Media has been doing great work. They're Absolutely. a co-op media site run entirely on subscriptions, and just really dig their stuff. And this is a great follow-up to like the sort of work those folks were doing over at Motherboard, the Vice site. So this is cool. We've got a lot more news to dive into, but let's head back to Leo for another word from our sponsor.
Hey guys, just want to interrupt a little bit to tell you about one of my favorite sponsors, Mint Mobile. Oh, I love these guys. I've been a Mint Mobile customer for, I don't know, 3-4 years now. Look, I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to go crawling through a bed of hot coals just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. And that's what I love about Mint Mobile. When they said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan, I said, hold on a minute. I called them on it. Turns out, yep, it's really that easy to get wireless for $15 a month. In fact, the longest part of the process, the time you spent on hold waiting to break up with the old carrier. Get rid of those guys. It is not only easy to switch to Mint Mobile, they'll send you the SIM if you use SIMs, no charge. If it's eSIMs, it's even easier. You could take your existing phone and make it a Mint Mobile phone today. Port your number over. You've already got your contacts, your apps. You're up and running, and you are saving big time. $15 a month? That's big. What do you pay right now? I know it's more than that, unless you're using Mint Mobile. To get started, go to mintmobile.com/twit. You'll see right there, all 3-month plans are only $15 a month, including the unlimited plan. All plans come with high-speed data on the largest 5G network, T-Mobile, and unlimited talk and text nationwide for $15 a month. There's no upsell there. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan. Bring your phone number along with your existing contacts. They sell phones too at great prices. That's how I got my iPhone SE, and I love it. Find out how easy it is to switch to Mint Mobile. Get 3 months of premium wireless service, $15 a month. Mint Mobile to get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month. You go to mintmobile.com/twit. That's mintmobile.com/twit. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month. Unheard of. mintmobile.com/twit. Now here's the details. $45 upfront payment required. That's $15 a month, but over 3 months. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fee, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. mintmobile.com/twit. Back to you, Devendra.
All right. Thanks so much, Leo. Anthony and Padre, you both put in a lot of great stories for us to discuss in this episode. I'd love for you guys to shout out, like, what are the ones that are most interesting to you right now?
I think for me, the Flappy Bird controversy.
Flappy Bird guy, yeah.
That's a good hit. Yeah, that's a good hit.
So this is a situation where there was this group called calling itself the Flappy Bird Foundation that announced there's a new version of Flappy Bird coming soon. And but they were a little bit mysterious about who they were. To be fair, they never claimed that the original developer of Flappy Bird was involved. But just this morning, then he posted and he said, "I have nothing to do with this. I'm not involved. I didn't sell anything," because apparently what had happened is he trademarked Flappy Bird, but then some other company basically a couple years ago filed to have his trademark terminated because he hadn't done anything with it for almost a decade. Wow. And so the people that when the Flappy Bird Foundation says, "Hey, we bought the trademark to Flappy Bird," that what they mean is that they bought it from this random other company that took it from him. And he also said, "I hate crypto because they're sort of." If you dig around, not the public part, not the publicly linked to parts of the websites, but like parts of the website you can find on Google, there's definitely pages that reference crypto. So he said, I hate crypto. And so I think it's very clear that he is not happy about this. And I think that, partly because there's so many Flappy Bird clones that came out when he took the game down. So like really the idea that this is the official Flappy Bird game, it really just means that they bought the trademark. That's all it means.
I do like the ultimate thing we've learned here is that the Flappy Bird creator remains cool as hell, not supporting crypto. So that's cool that he took a step back because the internet just got so bad. That's just wild, though, because I saw the trailer for this thing. The announcement seemed really polished. Like, hey, we've got Flappy Bird's back. We've got new characters. We've got all these modes. We've got all these different things. It seems like a really polished and well put together game. So I do wonder, I don't know. Have we heard anything else about like what is up with the company or this version of the game?
they may have money. It doesn't mean they don't have money.
Yeah,
they just don't have the original developer involved.
Which, I mean, there is something so meta about a story about a developer who created a legendary game that overnight became a phenomenon and sparked almost its own genre. No, not almost, sparked its own genre within gaming.
Absolutely.
Who removed it because he realized that what it had become in a capitalist system online was the worst, and he didn't want to expose the world to that. Who then, years later, sees that this business online and a capitalist system is the worst, and it just sort of reinforces the reason why he took the game down in the first place. I want this guy to have all the monies. I really, really do. He, like you said, he's cool as hell, and he did it for the right reason. And this cash grab, I think anyone who knows, who realizes this is what's happening would just hate this company into the ground.
So I do wonder, are people just going to fully reject this? I don't know. Like, how evil is this company if they just bought the trademark? We don't know. There's a lot of things we don't know. I, in general, also don't like supporting crypto things. But yeah, Dong Nguyen, good luck to this guy. Like, I hope we have not heard from him in a very, very long time, too. For the first time since 2017 was his tweet responding to this whole controversy. So I'm sure he made some money, from the original Flappy Bird, but from what I remember too, like the sort of abuse he got from people after the game became so successful, like people were really snarky and negative to him, and he just didn't want to be a part of that at all. That was part of the reason he just kind of left. So, okay, We'll be keeping an eye on Flappy Bird. Padre, any of your stories you want to really shout out here?
Kind of want the Microsoft story, just sure. Because this is something that we spoke about a lot after the whole CrowdStrike thing happened. So you had Microsoft, who back when that first happened, reminded the world that in 2009 the EU made them grant low-level OS access to security vendors, basically saying anything that a Microsoft product would have access to, a third party needs to have access to. That directly allowed this to happen. So when CrowdStrike sent the bad update to Falcon, it was because it had access to a very low level of the operating system that it allowed them to brick so many systems around the world. So what Microsoft was trying to do was to say, let's remove that, let's remove that. And there was an immediate backlash, both from the security community on the internet and even from Twit listeners who were saying, no. Any third-party vendor needs to have this access. It doesn't matter if this happened this once, this was a fluke, et cetera, et cetera. Microsoft seems to now be sort of striking a conciliatory note here. They're saying, we want to remove low-level access. However, we're going to design security sensors, hooks into the OS, so that third-party security vendors can still scan what's happening with the OS. They can still prevent things from being changed that shouldn't be changed. However, they will never again be allowed to do what CrowdStrike did. This is still very early days, and this is a very early proposal. They kind of have an idea of how they're going to make this work. But this is something I've been wanting for the longest time, because Apple has done this with their operating system for generations now.
Right.
And it makes sense with an operating system that is run on so many computers around the world to do this. Am I crazy here?
No, I think I totally agree. I mean, I can understand like why developers would want to continue to have access to this, but CrowdStrike was a disaster. Like one of those things that's like, oh man, the internet, like our entire infrastructure right now is just like really hanging on a couple companies. Like my local Starbucks, like couldn't take credit cards. Like a bunch of businesses walking around my town. It's just like, infrastructure is just dead because of this one company had a one hack, and it affects a lot of things. So I'm sure Microsoft is pissed. I saw that this news came out of No Press Allowed Security Summit that was held this week that I have not heard much about too. So now that's interesting. I do want to hear more about what happened there. I think like we joke about how bug filled and how open and how like insecure Windows is. Like to me, taking away this access just makes sense. Maybe give people hooks to have more control there. But I'm not a developer, certainly not a security engineer too, so I don't see the upside to allowing that. Padre, like any thoughts, or Anthony, like is there anything you've heard from your travels why Microsoft would want to allow this?
Yeah,
I guess. Oh, go ahead.
That's great. Sorry.
I was going to say, I mean, I'm also not a developer or security professional.
Seems bad to give developers this access.
I understand that, I mean, just in general, right? Philosophically, that they've wanted to just be the more open platform in a lot of ways. And so if traditionally this is just something they've provided access to, and they're like, oh, yeah, maybe not. Like, maybe there are more, we realize now there are more downsides than there are upsides. That totally makes sense to me, that maybe it made sense before, maybe it's become clear that it doesn't really make sense anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I can play devil's advocate to my own position.
Sure.
Because as a developer, I would also say, wait a minute, you're making me trust that Microsoft is going to give me enough hooks into the system so that I can do what I need to do to develop my XYZ product. That could be a very uncomfortable position for a security vendor, especially since Microsoft also makes security products. So they could argue, wait a minute, Microsoft's giving their own products more access than we have, therefore their functionality is greater. I get that. I totally get that. And I understand that that's a concern. And I get the fact that a lot of people don't trust Microsoft. Totally. I'm on board. But to leave it open like this, it has always struck me as something insane. None of our systems here at the Curia and at the Vatican were affected because we don't run third-party software. Mm-hmm. We actually trust Microsoft systems, plus we've got security gateways around our networks. That's the way that we've decided to do that, because we don't like any software using those low-level hooks. I mean, nothing uses that on our network because we see it as such a massive security hole. So, but if I was a developer and Microsoft said, "Trust me, we will always allow you to develop your software," I probably wouldn't trust them.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I'm sure like security software people are just a little worried about that.
Yeah, and I get that.
So if you didn't trust them, what would you do about it?
So if I didn't trust Microsoft, what I would say is, look, the reason why we developed for Microsoft in the first place is because it's historically been an open platform. That's the reason why we didn't go for the Apple. That's the reason why we don't develop for Linux for other reasons. So if you're going to take that away from us, and if you're going to make us just another app developer on Windows 11, 12, whatever it's going to be in the future, then we're not going to put our resources into this because we will never be able to develop products that, should Microsoft decide to enter the same market, we will never be able to compete with them. Mm-hmm. So I see that. That's a
fair.
real concern. Yeah, it's fair.
And Apple has certainly been guilty of that too. Like look at mobile browsers on iOS and iPadOS. Like that's all, you can only run the Safari engine. No other real browser can truly exist, and everything is slower than Safari too, like the native Safari. So yeah. I see that argument too. This is a sticky place for Microsoft, but also, man, I can imagine they're pissed because CrowdStrike is basically that is a black eye Microsoft did not need right now when they're dealing with so many other things. And
the way that it was being pushed around the EU is that this is a Microsoft outage, and it's like, no, Microsoft has done some horrible stuff, and they've released some incredibly buggy software. This was not them. Mm-hmm. This was a third party that had abused their low-level access to the operating system to brick millions of computers around the world.
Mm-hmm. Anthony, you put in a story, too, that was really interesting, because we've all seen Mark Zuckerberg's glow up over the last year. His free-flowing hair, his gold chain. I feel like this guy has turned 40, basically, and has all of a sudden gotten a personality, or at least learned how to have a personality. And most recently, in a very, very long podcast, he was on, let me see, what was the show?
Acquired
is the show. Also, a lot of these podcasts are coming out of nowhere. I'm like, okay, apparently this is a very big podcast that I don't really listen to very much. But he said he's done apologizing. And he also expressed regret for apologizing for Facebook's mistakes over the last few years, too. And this, to me, does not seem like the life lesson that we really want Mark Zuckerberg to take right now, but that is it. That's what we're hearing.
It's because he's become a real boy.
Yeah, he's a real boy now.
I mean, I feel like there's so much to say about just like what is going on with Mark Zuckerberg.
I think he has a really good life coach, but also a lot of people who are just telling him, "Don't worry, man. Don't worry about all the damage you've done to democracy and everything else. The billions you've wasted on the metaverse and the thousands of jobs that your companies had to let go because of your decisions. Like, don't worry about it, man. Be cool."
So here's the charitable version or the best version of, I think, what he's saying, which is that essentially that it's not to say that he hasn't screwed up or that Facebook/Meta hasn't screwed up. I mean, I would argue that becoming Meta was a mistake itself. But what he's particularly talking about, I think, is like that kind of performative apology, that people just always want you to apologize, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with like whether you're doing something wrong or something right, but just there are certain times when everyone's just sort of mad at you because it's easy to blame Facebook when things go wrong. I think obviously that a lot of that is tied to the 2016 election in the sense that Facebook, misinformation on Facebook contributed to Trump's victory there. I think, there's still a lot of debate of like, clearly there was misinformation. Like, is it fair to say like that Donald Trump became president because of Facebook? I would argue probably not. So he's saying like, listen, and then when you apologize, that all you're doing is encouraging people to demand more apologies from you.
Right.
And I don't think any of that is wrong. I think coming out and saying that you're not going to apologize again, particularly at this time when, I think there's so much concern about technology, and I think a lot of very justifiable concern about the effect of technology seems a little tone deaf. I think that, I don't think this is like I don't think this is a great PR move, except for like with like really hardcore like tech bro types, like the All In podcast fans, like people who are just like, screw the woke, everything's too woke. Like, yes, that this is great sort of like red meat for them, but otherwise, like, if you really feel this way, maybe just apologize less. But I don't know why you have to make a big deal out of it. And in general, I think that it's probably a good thing if Facebook feels like it has to be accountable to the broader public.
Mm-hmm. Maybe stop doing the things that make you feel that you need to deliver those apologies in the first place.
It sounds like someone close to Zuckerberg has been saying, "Oh, you've been apologizing. You've been apologizing.
You look weak.
What the people want." And they don't care. They're not listening. And it's like, look. I understand that you have FU money, Mark, but people haven't wanted apologies from you. People were never asking for apologies from you. People were asking you to listen to them, so that you don't have to apologize. As you were saying, Devin, it's like, look, you've damaged democracy, you've damaged privacy, you've wasted a lot of money on unprofitable venues out of ego. Don't apologize for it. Just listen. You've got a lot of smart people around you. You've got people who know the industry. Just take a clue every once in a while, and everything will be fine. But yeah, it's this weird echo chamber I think he's in, that people are saying you got to let you be you. And none of us are not saying that. None of us are saying that he can't be him. None of us are saying that he can't wear hoodies and be who he is. But we are saying you are affecting the society and the world in which we live. And we would love for you to maybe listen to a little bit of how you could do things differently.
Yeah, I don't know. Read some books beyond like what the Silicon Valley bros are dealing with right now too. It's also funny too because this follows like him essentially apologizing for all the apologizing he did, around like the censoring COVID misinformation and stuff. And like, does this really fit your new goal? You're once again apologizing, and also you're apologizing for something that probably was actually pretty helpful back when there was a lot of misinformation going around, something that potentially saved lives. This whole idea of neutrality, it's so mealy-mouthed and so, I don't know, spineless. Like, the guy, I'm sure he has a great life coach now, probably a great therapist, and who's just like helped him be free of all his pain and all his anxiety, and that's what we're seeing now. It's what he's living his best life, and also F us.
Well, it's a triangle and a drum circle and all of that fun stuff. Yep.
It's also interesting. This comes, like a week after that blog post that went viral that Paul Graham did. This is Paul Graham, the founder of Y Combinator, about founder mode, which, kind of like AI, sort of like founder mode means whatever you want it to mean. But I think was generally about this idea of founders should not, even when you are like running a giant public company. Sorry about my AirPods. But even when you're running a giant public company, you don't necessarily need to be listening to all these people. You should like be in founder mode, which again, the charitable interpretation is like, don't just bring in a bunch of like MBAs and people who've run, Fortune 500 companies. Like, listen to also like the lower level people at your company, like listen to a variety of sources, which I think, again, like there's a good version of the argument, but also it seems like how it really gets interpreted is just like, be unapologetic, don't listen to anyone, do whatever you want because you're the founder, and if anyone has a problem with it, F them.
It's basically, it's not apologizing for the early Facebook philosophy of move fast and break things, basically, right? It's like after acknowledging that maybe Facebook broke a few things for a while, and he's like, no, I'm not going to say sorry for that. Made me billions of dollars. It was great. No clue what was happening there with him. Any of these stories you guys really want to talk about?
Just one, because I think it'll be fun for a group discussion, and that's the Hypermiling record. That is
a big number. Yeah.
So a guy by the name of Wayne Gertis, he had a brand new 2024 Prius LE, or
the cool looking Prius, the one that looks like a cool car now. Yeah.
He went Los Angeles to New York City. That's 3,217 miles, and he had an average fuel efficiency of 93 miles per gallon.
Man.
Now, it sounds cool. Sounds cool, except for the fact that I dug down a little bit and I found some of the details of his trip. He drove the 40, which is the one that I just did this summer. I just drove 3,000 miles on the 40 to do my retreat and camping. And on the 40, he was doing 60 or 55. in a place where people are typically driving between 80 and 85.
Sure.
So
he was a hazard to other drivers in that
super hazard to other drivers. In fact, I probably passed him at some point because we were driving that road at the same time. So cool. I am all about hypermiling. I love it's like a game to me to see how high I can get the meter. I have a 2015 Prius, and I get that thing when I go between San Francisco and Las Vegas. I do about 50 to 51 miles per gallon.
Nice.
But I'm driving safe. I'm actually going quickly. It's just I'm not using the brakes. I'm always making sure that I'm accelerating slowly. Do any of you drive fuel efficient vehicles, or do you find it fascinating to try to get that higher number?
I do find it fascinating. I don't have an EV. I have sadly I have a normal gas guzzler, but when
That's
I do
fine.
try out EVs, it's like I do want to see I do want to let the brakes ride for a while, regenerate some power. I see the game in it, and I can't wait till I make that upgrade. I like the idea of it for sure.
I haven't owned a car for many decades now. Again, I live in New York City,
But
I had a
cars.
Prius. The last car I had was a Prius, and I mean, usually the best I could do was 40, but this was like in 2007, 2008. Definitely now when I rent a hybrid, like I definitely start paying attention to that efficiency and being like, oh yeah, let's see what I can do. I mean, I'd never heard the term hypermiling before today, but like, it does feel like to me part of the takeaway is just like, wow, you can really gamify anything.
Yes.
But if you're gonna gamify, that's cool. Just don't get, because I definitely have many years ago gotten into very minor accidents because I was paying a little too much attention to what was going on my dashboard rather than what was actually in front of me, and so that's also a risk. But this is cool. I think this is a cool thing.
Some of it is fun. So when I'm hypermiling, I'm turning off the AC and the heater. So I normally try to do this in the winter because I love cold, but I can't stand heat. Things like, again, when I drive between San Francisco and New York, unless I'm getting off the freeway, I never use the brakes. I'm always using the regenerative. I plan my acceleration so that I drain the battery as I'm coming up hills so that I have battery capacity to fill it back up with a regen on the way down. But then there's crazy hypermilers who will get within like 3 feet of a tractor trailer in front of them to take advantage of the draft. It's
not a good way to drive. You should not, drive responsibly, folks. You could drive efficiently, but also drive responsibly. Like, this guy going really, really slow on a fast highway is not the best thing in the world, unfortunately.
Again, I was on that highway, and I was doing 85, and I was slow.
What is the speed limit on that highway?
The speed limit is 75, so 10 over.
Okay.
Until you get to Oklahoma.
10 over. That's cool. That's cool.
In Oklahoma, they're serious. 75 means 75. If you go over 75, they will ticket you. But when I was doing 85 for that 1,000-mile stretch, I was getting probably 44, 45 miles per gallon. So it wasn't that much off. I can't imagine doing that stretch at 55. Not only would it take longer, but you would piss everybody off.
I would love that footage of all that.
Yes.
Just the in-car footage. Yeah. Make it
the semi trucks are doing 75, so you're causing a serious problem if you're doing 55.
That's not slow enough to be ticketed, right? If you were going like 45, you'd be like, yeah, okay, you're really disrupting traffic. But I guess
Texas, you have to do 60. If you're not doing at least 60, they'll ticket you.
Okay.
But Oklahoma and Arizona, you can go down to 55.
That makes sense. Sense. Well, yeah. Thank you for sharing the story. Let's hear back from Leo for a final word from our sponsors.
Hey, Dravindra, this is my last chance to say thank you so much for filling in for me. Thank to Ian Thompson for last week. And good news for me, I will be back next week. JetBlue permitting. I will, as long as I get back on time, I will be back for next week's Twit. But thank you so much for filling in for me. I do want to mention that this episode of This Week in Tech is brought to you by Lookout. Today, every company is in the business of managing data. I mean, that's what it's all about. But it also means every company is at increased risk of data exposure and loss. Cyber threats, breaches, leaks. Cyber criminals grow more sophisticated every day. Modern breaches now happen instantly, in minutes, not months. So at a time when the majority of sensitive corporate data is moved up to the cloud, traditional boundaries no longer exist, and the strategies for securing that data have fundamentally changed. Enter Lookout. From the first phishing text to the final data grab, Lookout stops modern breaches as swiftly as they unfold, whether on a device in the cloud, across networks, even working remotely at the local coffee shop. Lookout gives you clear visibility into all your data at rest and in motion. You'll monitor, assess, and protect without sacrificing productivity for security. With a single unified cloud platform, Lookout simplifies and strengthens, reimagining security for the world that will be today. Visit lookout.com right now to learn how to safeguard data, how to secure hybrid work, how to reduce IT complexity. Lookout.com. Remember that name and check them out. We thank Lookout so much for supporting This Week in Tech. We thank you for supporting This Week in Tech by visiting lookout.com. That way they know hey, these ads work. They work. They really do. Hey, thank you for watching. Thank you, Devendra. See you next week.
Padre, the story about a fake retro video game ring sounds absolutely wild. Can you help us break it down?
And it's my neck of the woods.
It's so great.
Italy. Yeah, so there's been a big craze for retro video games. I mean, this has been around for a while. We're in fact, on Know How, we made a DIY arcade cabinet with a retro Pi in it. Very cool stuff. However, it's also big money. And anyone who has done the Retro Pi project knows that game developers really don't like it when you steal their ROMs just to put on your own devices.
Right.
So just a while ago, there was a group of Italian retro video game pirates that were caught here in Italy. They had 12,000 consoles that were all manufactured in China. They had 47 million pirated games in ROMs. And all told, it was worth about 47.5 million euros.
Wow.
Now, yeah, none of the devices met any tech or safety specs. In fact, I saw a couple, and they looked like they were just begging to set fires in houses. So that was pretty fun.
Oh, fun.
But it shows that there's a market here. There's a real market for retro video games. So I'm wondering if is it my generation now that's in the driving seat of collectibles? You know, have we gone from stamps to recovering our childhood with some really bad 8-bit games?
I totally think so. I mean, listen, I have a CRT sitting in my basement that I cannot wait to hook up my old systems to. But also, I think like the younger generation of gamers are interested in going back to this stuff, and
the classics.
we can make them accessible. You know, like as a kid growing up in the 90s, in the late 80s, I was never interested in going back to the heyday of Atari or anything, but now you can draw a clear... Yeah, well, now I can. But also, now I think kids can also draw a clearer line between the heyday of like 8-bit and 16-bit gaming to a lot of the stuff that we're seeing right now. You know, if you love Hideo Kojima's games, you probably want to go back and play some of those early Metal Gear games too. So like there is more of a need to go back and revisit those things because our culture moves so quickly right now too.
Also, it's a simpler generation. I think it really does bring back that nostalgia that I can play Mario Brothers. I can play Donkey Kong. I can play Dig Dug, Galaga. And I can get the same kind of experience I had when I was a child. There's no big plot. There's no cinematics. There's no cut screens. It's just me moving a joystick and trying to do something for the next 5 minutes. It kind of... Is it nostalgia or is that actually fun? Actually, that's a good question. Yeah,
it can be both. I think. Yeah, go ahead, Anthony.
Well, I was going to say, I guess part of the question, one of the tells would be, is all of the sales of classic, the classic Nintendo consoles and things like that, or the people who were I guess victims of this ring, are they all like our age, or are they younger people? And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I will definitely say that I'm susceptible to that too. One of the first things the other reason I got my Steam Deck besides playing Baldur's Gate 3 was also because there are all these old Sierra games that I can't play on any of my Apple devices, but I can play it on a Steam Deck. And so I did that, and it was really fun. I will say that those are definitely games that I have a hard time imagining a modern gamer really getting much out of. And I also remember with the Super Nintendo Classic, I love Mario Kart. It's maybe my favorite game of all time, and getting to play the original Super Mario Kart, I booted it up and I was like, oh, I went back too far. This is real primitive.
It's rough.
I've done that too. I've like loaded up an old ROM, like, oh gosh, I remember this from when I was a kid, and I'm like, oh, this was a bad game. This This is like a really bad game.
Or it was good for its time. Like the original Mario Kart,
Right.
I played so much of that too, like on the Super Nintendo, and it's hard to go back to now. But also, you look at the Mario Kart that's on Switch now, like it still plays very similarly. You know, it's still the same basic concepts. They added more items and stuff, but like the concepts of what made hit games just really locked in back then. The photo in the story for this thing shows Street Fighter 2. I distinctly remember that moment where that was like an $80-$90 game in the 90s. I had to wait a while before my parents could get me that game, but playing that, which looked and felt arcade perfect, like that was like life changing. And you look to fighting games today, like, okay, they're not all 2D, but it's a very similar formula to what Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat laid down back then. So I'm just saying, most, like, a very important generation of games, 8-bit and 16-bit, 16-bit in particular. I think more so than the Atari stuff, but I don't know. Padre, do you disagree?
I want a ROM of E.T. for the Atari 2600. I've never been able to find that because I'm pretty sure that game is as bad as I remember.
Oh, yeah.
That and do you remember Bus Simulator?
I do.
It was literally a bus going from San Francisco to Los Angeles to Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. So it was 8 hours of driving a bus on a straight road. Mm-hmm. I kind of want to find that just because I want to see how complicated the programming was. But I get your point. Yes, that was an important generation of games. It was foundational to a lot of people who went on to create wonderful games, masterpieces. And again, that was in a time before games were expected to be narrative masterpieces. So yeah, I guess it's important. I will say that I know a couple of the guys at the Italian version of the Customs and Border Patrol, and I was wondering, I'm like, so are you guys destroying all of these systems, or where are you keeping them?
You don't want to burn down the Vatican with one of these systems, I think.
No, I really don't. You
don't want to do that.
But
it's gonna be
I would love to get some of those ROMs. 47 million.
I'm sure the ROMs will be easily found. Do not condone piracy, but also, you know, sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
Allegedly.
So 16-bit games. Come on, there were some great storytelling there too. I just recently replayed Chrono Trigger with my daughter, and she loved it. She loved it, and that was like her introduction to RPGs. And now we're like playing very similar things too. So like, yeah, that whole generation laid out a whole, you know, basically so many things that we're still living with
I
today.
liked the Turbo Graphics because there was both a console and there was a portable, and you could swap the games between the two. That was kind of cool. I remember the Dreamcast. The Sega Dreamcast was actually exceptional.
Actually, and was it as of Monday? Monday was like the 25th anniversary of the Dreamcast launch. It was $9,999. Yeah. I mean, listen, Crazy Taxi, which now our vice president is or potential vice president is something that Tim Walz also really enjoyed too. But talk about like that was the transition to like where things were going next. Shout out to the Dreamcast. That was the first console I could buy with my own money. It will always have a place in my heart. Yeah. Phantasy Star Online. Did you guys ever play that?
I've heard of it. I don't think I ever played that.
It was, you were playing a multiplayer, you know, cool anime RPG over like a 33.6K modem. You know, it seemed impossible in the late 90s. So how did the Dreamcast do that? PlayStation 2 did not have great networking stuff until very, very late. You know, it really took until the Xbox 360 arrived to do really good networked gaming again. So I don't know. I miss the Dreamcast. All right.
I remember setting up really low-level PCs to play Castle Wolfenstein networked, the LAN game. And the first time we did that was just amazing. We had never done anything like that. We're like, oh, gosh, this is what all gaming should be like. And 30 years later,
we got there eventually.
Just like that, yeah.
When I was in college between 01 and 05, so this is pre-Xbox 360, but the original Xbox was there. It had an Ethernet port, and we all quickly learned if you plug that thing into the school network, they all show up as if they're on the same LAN. So we were able to play like original Halo dorm to dorm, and like would have like epic shootouts and campaigns and stuff too. And I like that sold the concept to me as well.
That was back when network security was a strongly worded letter from the resident assistant. It's like, don't do that.
Don't do that. Okay. Don't do that. We all came up with ways to get around the IT department's BitTorrent blocking and what was it back then? Audio Galaxy, all those things.
Well, see, we didn't have BitTorrent when I was in college. We had the UUNet. So you'd have to use Gopher to get files that had been encoded into ASCII files and turn them back into binaries. So yeah, it was different. We didn't have the World Wide Web. That did not exist.
That's harder.
That was harder.
So much
it's fun
harder.
though. When you got it to work, that was so much more fun.
Oh man. All right, I think it's a good time to jump into our pop culture corner. I want to shout out something that I have been watching that I did not expect to even enjoy. But my daughter, we were bouncing around Disney Plus, and my daughter saw this. I don't know, the cover art for Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy. Which
I
is
have
a new
seen that for
series.
weeks.
Yeah.
Is it any good? Should I watch it?
It's a lot of fun. I think it's more fun if you have a kid that you're watching it with too. Like, I think all the Lego Star Wars stuff has been like generally enjoyable. This one is kind of interesting because, first of all, Disney has confirmed that this is the first official story after the end of the Rey storyline. So this
is canon. This is canon.
It is canon, but it's also like, it's a Lego thing. So they also do a thing that I don't think the live action movies can ever do, which is completely rework the universe. So within the first episode, all the characters we know, the entire history of Star Wars is completely flipped on its head in really fun ways. The image that they show a lot, there is a Darth Jar Jar. A lot of the good characters are bad guys in really fun ways too. Like Darth Jar Jar is not a very successful Sith, but he does exist. And my daughter thinks Darth Jar Jar is hilarious. So
yeah. Darth Jar Jar actually goes back to the release of the prequel.
Yes,
like that was an actual theory that fans had, that he was a real power behind it all.
This series does like bring in a lot of that like deep lore to like first of all, it completely recaps the original trilogy, the prequels, and the sequel trilogy in like 1 minute. It's like, oh, there's this Anakin Skywalker, yada yada yada. So if you are worried about your kid, if you want your kid to be pure and not know the whole Darth Vader story, I'm sorry. Like, that's going to be a hard thing to do. Also, I don't know when I can show my daughter original Star Wars, because that is, as much as I love that movie, it's a slow movie. It is so slow compared to things that kids are used to today. But anyway.
I did a rewatch of the original series and the prequel and then the sequel trilogy. And I noticed that I was more engaged with the original series because both the prequel and the sequel, they're in the modern storytelling format, which is very quick cuts, lots of different characters.
Well, except for Phantom Menace. Scenes. I don't know if there's anything modern we can say about Phantom Menace. I did recently rewatch that in theaters, and I wrote about that in Gadget, and I think I have more respect for that movie than I ever did, certainly after like the onslaught of really crappy MCU stuff we've gotten lately. So I think I have a lot of respect for that movie, for the craft of it, and for the design in that movie. But yeah, the original films are just like, that's 70s filmmaking. You know, that is, people took their time. It's very deliberate pacing. Things are not like that anymore. So anyway, this kids show introduces new characters. In fact, there is a new Sith Lord called Dev. So I appreciate I love that. That's kind of fun. Dev, just like the beginning of my name, basically. But there are a lot of like deep cuts here too, like that guy in The Last Jedi who like licks the dirt in the salt world. Which I think, who would do that?
He's back.
But there's a cut to, in this reconfigured universe, he licks it. Pepper. Funny. And only like Star Wars nerds who are like, oh, I remember that guy. Who would lick the dirt? And then, okay, it's a funny joke. I think it's funny. I think like it is a very good traditional Star Wars show. And my daughter was totally into it. I tried to get her into the various Clone Wars shows, and she just would not have it. And those things are really plot heavy. Like, they're not really fun. It takes a while for those shows to get really good, whereas this is like instantly entertaining. There are a lot of fun characters, and it does things I don't think the live action Star Wars will ever be brave enough to do. It'll just be like, well, the universe is flipped now, and we're never going back to the old way. So I think
as long as it has Salacious Crumb, I'm in.
I believe it does have Salacious Crumb.
It does?
Listen, Darth Vader is part of the Rebels now. Palpatine is part of the Rebels. Darth Vader is in white in this series.
Okay,
there's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
They do a lot of fun reworkings. There's a Darth Rey. There's a Darth, like a lot of the good guys are bad. A lot of the bad guys are good. It's fun, especially if you have kids and you just want to introduce them into Star Wars and you don't want to be like very precious about the plot and everything, because the kids will know. who Darth Vader is. Like, they talk to each other at school. My son, he went to daycare when he was like 1.5, and by the age of 2, he knew the Naruto run. I never show him Naruto.
Oh, yeah.
Kids just know the Naruto run because they all see each other doing it, and that's how culture gets shared among the youngins.
Kids are doing that and they don't know what it's from?
They don't know what it's from. Well, maybe they saw their older, like maybe they're watching Naruto, but I don't know who's watching Naruto at 1.5, but they probably see their older siblings do it, and it's like a thing that has recurred through time. So the Naruto ninja run is a thing my son does now. I've never confronted him with Naruto. I've never given him Naruto. Anyway, Anthony, does this sound like a show you'd be into checking out?
It sounds like a show that I'm glad exists and will probably never watch. I just don't need that much more Star Wars content in my life. I mean, I'm waiting for Andor. I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think I'm good. If I ever have kids, I'll keep that in the back pocket for
if you have, nieces and nephews and whatnot. Like, this is
that's true. I do have a niece, so maybe that'll be something we'll watch.
That is a masterful diplomatic answer.
That's a way to do it. Are you guys pro or against Acolyte? Because I love the Acolyte, and I think what happened with the reviews for that were just kind of wild to me.
I have not watched it at all.
It's really good.
Not because I don't like it, but because I'm waiting I need a chunk of time where I can watch the whole thing.
I think that's probably the way to do it. Like, I think I was lucky enough to see the screener, so I saw like the whole thing. Or no, I didn't see I saw the first 4 episodes, and by the time I was done with that, I was like, oh my god, this is like the best Star Wars we've gotten in a very long time, because it's essentially Star Wars through the lens of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which are things I love. I love Crouching, like literally direct references to Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. So that, yes, sign me up for all of that. And I kind of love where it goes with the villain and with the, just with the adventure of it all. But yeah, the reviews and the actual response from a lot of people were just like people really picking holes in the plot. And I'm like, that's not why I'm watching that show, really.
But that's the toxic Star Wars fandom.
It was partially that, and there are good-natured reviewers who are doing it too. And I was just like, I don't necessarily need everything to click together, but that's just me. I highly recommend Star Wars Acolyte. I'm sure people listening to this strongly disagree, but I think Acolyte kicked ass. Anthony, did you see that yet?
So I wanted to like it because I very much was like, wow, it seems like the worst people in the world hate this show. And I also just love the work of Leslie Headland. And I watched the first episode, that opening action scene, really good. The rest of it was kind of boring. And it wasn't that I like made an active decision to stop watching. It's just every time I was like, oh, maybe I'll watch another episode of The Acolyte. There was something that seemed more pressing and more interesting. And suddenly I was like, oh, I guess I'm probably not finishing The Acolyte.
It's constructed like a murder mystery, and if you are not interested in like the core thing that's trying to deal with, like, I can understand that. But I'd recommend watching, especially for fans of The Good Place. I think there are many things to enjoy watching The Acolyte.
I stepped away from the mega studios for a bit, so the Disney stuff, from the Marvel stuff, because I kind of wanted to see some original IP. And the one I've picked up on now is called Mr. In Between. It's an Australian series that's available on Hulu and therefore on Disney. It's phenomenal. It's probably the tightest crime / drama / black comedy series I've ever seen.
Nice.
And incredibly well put together. Another one that I saw was, have you ever seen Letterkenny?
Yep.
Letterkenny. And so now I'm watching Shoresy, which is the spinoff from Letterkenny. Again, these are original IPs. I think they're incredibly well written, especially Letterkenny. The writing, the dialogue is just hilarious.
So like super fast humor in Letterkenny. Like just like,
exactly.
Joke per minute in that show was amazing. Yeah.
Right.
Anything you want to shout out this week, Anthony?
Well, I was going to say that, I think a lot of the AMC shows got added to Netflix in the last month or so. I mean, I think mostly just the first season. So I finally saw the first season of The Terror, and that is one of the best things I've ever seen.
The what?
The Terror. Terror.
Never even heard of that.
It's a hard word to pronounce. But so it's like, I think what has become sort of like a historical horror anthology show. But the first season, it's based on a Dan Simmons novel. And the concept is, there were this real expedition to find the Northwest Passage in the first half of the 1800s. And there are 2 ships, the Terror and the Erebus. I don't know why you'd call your ship the Terror.
Why would you call your ship the Terror? What are you expecting?
And they basically went and they disappeared. And so this is a fictional attempt to explain what happened to them. And it is an incredibly bleak show because, I mean, you kind of know that almost everyone is going to die. But it's also like just really beautiful and moving. And if you just want really, really bleak, well done horror, it's great. It has Jared Harris, who's one of my favorite actors, and he's incredible in it.
Oh, he's excellent.
Tobias Menzies is in it. I think like the production, I feel like they had the money they needed. You can sometimes tell that they're filming on, a set, not actually out there, but like overall, it's one of my favorite things I've seen. Highly, highly recommend.
I typically subscribe to Netflix 1 month out of the year and then watch everything and then stop for the next 11 months. The one that I really wanted to watch on Netflix because I love the book was the 3-body problem. Have you any of you watched that?
I saw it. Yeah.
It's okay.
Was it a decent adaptation?
I was not a huge fan, but I know people who do like the show. Yeah.
I think it got off to a rough start because it's just trying to introduce so many different characters. Which, I mean, it's funny because if you go back to Game of Thrones, like that first episode, I think is also pretty rough because you're just like, here's a person, here's a person, here's a person. You're like, what? And
but I was fully engaged with that first episode. Like that felt like life-changing to me. Yeah. Okay.
It took me a while to get into that show too.
But did you?
I think the premiere of 3-Body is even rougher. But what? Sorry.
Did you read the book before you watched it?
I read the books. Although I read the first book when it came out, and then I didn't read the sequels until like many years later. Okay. When people were like, no, you got to read the whole series. Which, if you haven't read the books, read the whole series. Don't just read the first one. Okay. But like the thing was, I remembered everything that happened in books 2 and 3. I didn't remember book 1 that well, except for like the really big stuff. So there's things that I was like, wow, they introduced this into the show. And then it turned out, no, actually, that's from the book. I had just forgotten that happened in the book.
And also,
there was one scene that I saw on YouTube. The people who have watched it or listened to the book know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody else. But
is it particularly violent and gruesome?
Involving
it's
a ship.
Extremely violent and gruesome one. Mm-hmm. In the book, it is not violent and gruesome. It just it just details what happens on the outside of the ship.
Because you don't see what happens on the inside.
You don't see what happens on the inside. And I know that in the series they did, and I actually think that was way better. It was way better
perhaps the way to do it
than what I read.
I think it's more, I saw half of the Netflix series, and it's more, I think it really breaks the characters down a lot. Like, it changes a lot of characters, also adds basically a group of young, pretty people to take the place of, like, a lot of the main characters, rather than...
Oh, I see.
It's just like a mid-40s business guy, right, for a lot of the chunk of the first book, too. So, like, yeah, he's not super interesting, but also it didn't quite work for me. Yeah,
I saw that Benedict Wong was a member of the cast. He's got to be the Chinese policeman, right?
He does. You'd wish he had a personality.
And he's very good. He's
when I read
Benedict
that book,
Wong.
He's the person I had in mind. I'm like, oh, that's Benedict Wong. Yeah.
It is. Okay. It all felt forced to me. But I know people who like the show, so there's that. Okay. It didn't quite work for me. Do you guys want to talk at all? There was one story somebody put in about Hot Ones coming to Netflix. Kind of fits within the pop culture section.
I love Hot Ones.
I love Hot Ones.
That's a great format, really.
Mm-hmm. I think Sean Evans is a great interviewer too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a like unlikely story where you're like that when someone describes it to you. Well, obviously this is a gimmick, and but then it like. By the way, I only linked to my own story just because the Bloomberg, which broke
you don't need
paywalled.
You don't need to.
I just want people to know I would not normally do this.
Sell our stuff.
Yeah, I think Hot Ones is great. I think the other thing that's interesting about it, I mean, from a Netflix perspective, is obviously they've like tried on and off to like crack the talk show format. And I mean, I love the John Mulaney Everybody's in LA show, but who knows if that's coming back. So like this could be another way to try to approach that. And then, from the buzz, from the, poor suckers in the media business perspective, like it's interesting to see like how Hot Ones is kind of like the most valuable thing that BuzzFeed has at this point. And it's this weird sort of like tail wagging the dog where I think they have a lot of debt. And so they're just trying to like monetize. Like I think they were trying to sell off Hot Ones in the hopes that could basically pay off their debt for a little while. And now I think they're probably just like, well, how can we monetize this thing? Because like other stuff is not going so great.
Right.
Poor BuzzFeed. Right. Yeah.
I mean, it was organic content that honestly, when I first heard about the concept, I thought that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Why would you give your guests hot sauce and they're going to be uncomfortable? They're not going to be able to answer. And then my sister was the one who said, no, watch 3 episodes with me. So I was with her at the home in Fremont. We watched 3 episodes and I said, I get it. Yeah, this is kind of cool. This is
because it breaks through the traditional like media interview format where like people are very rehearsed and everything, and like you just destabilize. And
he actually asks good questions.
He's a good interviewer.
Right.
So
because I think you and I have both been on like those like junkets with like film actors, and through no one's fault. I think like a lot of the times it's just very rehearsed. They've like been asked a similar question.
Oftentimes
many times
they hate
before.
being there too, so it's like, that's always fun. Yeah,
right.
You get 5 minutes, and then they're out. So
yeah, and it's so like even, and the thing is like I think the only thing worse than asking the obvious question is like trying to be creative, and you ask something like crazy, and they're just like, this is a stupid question. Like, what are you doing? Like,
and then people play games. People play like games with the talent too, like in their press questions, and that is cringe on another level too. But yeah, Hot Ones is like, against all odds, very good. So the story is like potentially Netflix is considering some sort of like some sort of live show with them.
Yeah, they would basically be like so like this wouldn't necessarily affect the YouTube show because obviously we've seen that when people try to take YouTube content, put it behind a paywall, like their existing fans are not very happy. But this is like special live episodes also hosted by Sean Evans on Netflix.
I would pay money for the next presidential debate if they were both on Hot Ones and he was the moderator.
100%.
I would pay so much money for that.
Man, you're just trying to kill somebody here. But I do think like outside the debate panel idea, Kamala Harris should absolutely do Hot Ones. Kamala Harris with Tim Walz should just do.
Oh, and she likes spicy food. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you know that she can handle spicy food better than you.
We know.
No question.
Yeah. It would just be a lot of fun. Yeah.
See, we're coming up with all these great ideas. Actually, okay, my favorite episode of Hot Ones though was the one with Gordon Ramsay.
Really?
That was spectacular.
That was good stuff, but I think the best one was like you got to leave it up to Conan O'Brien, who in the midst of launching his new travel show, he is such a genius at this because he basically deconstructed the Hot Ones formula because he's so smart at this. He knows the spectacle he wants to make and like makes it his own thing. And like I love Conan so much. I love that like despite not having a late night show anymore, like he is just doing his own thing, doing podcasts, but also doing travel shows and like just being as brilliant as he was when I fell in love with him watching The Simpsons. So yeah, love that guy so much. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think that's a wrap for this episode, guys. Where can we find you on the internet these days?
So I'm the weekend editor at TechCrunch. So just TechCrunch.com. You can, if you're on there on Saturday or Sunday, you'll probably see something I've written. I'm also at Anthony Ha across many social networks. I'm probably most active on Instagram and Blue Sky.
And you're doing a podcast too, right?
Oh, that's right. I also have a podcast called, an extremely irregular podcast called Original Content, where we review new streaming shows and movies.
Love it. Padre?
So you can find me here and the work that I do in Rome. Probably on my Twitter feed would be the best bet, which is still at PadreSJ. I promised Leo I would ride Twitter into the ground. Or I think we're very close. But the project that I'm working right now is called the Jesuit Pilgrimage app, and it's in my lower third. Basically, it's just something that we developed in our spare time, and it's actually turning into something pretty decent. Originally, it was just supposed to describe the pilgrimage of St. Ignatius to Rome, but now we're sort of including things from around the world. I've also, over the summer, because I got bored, I published 2 books.
Oh, wow.
I'm not going to give you the title or the nom de plume that I used. 2 different nom de plumes. They're both sci-fi, and if you find it on Amazon, you will know it's me because there are references to Twit in both of them.
Wait, are there any other clues to help people find it?
Wow.
One involves space travel, one involves time travel.
Fun. Let us know when you get your Netflix deal.
Narrowing it down.
Love it. Let us know when you get your Netflix deal, Padre. Like, we'd love to see that.
Absolutely.
And you guys can find me. I'm at Devinder on Twitter, Blue Sky, Mastodon, all the fun places. I'm on Threads, stupid. Don't pick me on Threads, please. I write about tech and Engadget. I podcast about movies at the Filmcast, at thefilmcast.com. I also do the Engadget podcast, so take a listen to that. And thank you both so much for joining us. I'm sorry we couldn't get Denise Howell in for this week, but hopefully another episode. And that's it, folks. Another twit is in the can.
Amazing.